Hey everyone, this is Melina,
Hey guys, it's Ariel.
and welcome back to our. I don't even know what to call it anymore because if it's on
Right,
YouTube,
because it's
it's
on
not.
YouTube now. Well, it's
Yeah,
still like our podcast, but it's just
I've-
on a different platform. So it's still AM and the PM.
right. Welcome back to our show. I like that. It makes me feel like Oprah Winfrey a little bit. Welcome back to our show. So today we're going to be talking about the Desolation of Smaug, which is what we just watched and is the natural progression
Yeah.
after an unexpected journey. So before we go into it, actually, let me read the little short version of the plot. And then I just want to hear like what you thought about it. I think this is your second time watching this one again. What
Yeah.
you thought about it in general, what you thought in comparison to the first one, like just, kind of overall thoughts.
Mhm.
So IMDb had a description, but it was two sentences and it was kind of lame. But they apparently you can submit like what's it called? Like user
Mhm.
descriptions, which I was like, that's cool. So I found one by somebody called Otaku Senpai, and I really liked this description, so I put it in here.
Okay.
Um, okay, so this movie came out in 2013, a year after the previous movie. After successfully crossing over and under the Misty Mountains, Thorin and company must seek aid from a powerful stranger before taking on the dangers of Mirkwood Forest without their wizard. If they reach the human settlement of Laketown, it will be time for the Hobbit Bilbo Baggins to fulfill his contract with the dwarves. The party must complete the journey to the Lonely Mountain, and burglar Baggins must seek out the secret door that will give them access to the hoard of the dragon Smaug. And where has Gandalf gotten off to? And what is his secret business to the south? So now, what did you think of the movie, like overall? And also for
Overall.
those of you who are listening slash watching, Ariel has not watched the third one, so please don't spoil it.
I
Point one,
haven't.
yeah, and point two, like if you hear something and you're like, well, that's answered in the third movie, she's not there yet. Just so you all
Not at all. Like I've only seen the first one and this one twice now.
right.
So I have no idea what happens in the third one.
So
Which I'm a little scared about. I'm a little scared. I feel like because there's probably a battle coming, I have to mentally prepare myself for bad things to happen to people that I really love, but it's fine.
I might like save some of your texts while because Ariel and I like to live text each other while we watch just about anything. You should see
Hmm.
our Bridgerton chat.
Yeah.
Um, so I might save some good ones to read video.
Oh boy. Yeah. So overall, I think the movie, I like the movie. Okay. So I think I've told you this before, but for some reason, when it comes to like trilogies or movie series, I always end up liking the middle movies a lot, which I think it probably makes sense, like plot wise, because it's like you're really getting into the depth and
Yeah.
action of everything. So I really liked this one a lot. I still think like the ending, I was every time I watch it, even this time around, I was like, it still feels very like abrupt to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like the ending is just like Smag's like, I am fire, I am death. And then Bill was like, dang, what do we do? And then it's
Yeah.
like end. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, that's it?
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember the first time I watched it, I texted you like, wait, that's it? That's the end? Like, there's no more? And you're like, it was almost 3 hours long. I'm like, I know, but like, that's it. So, but I really like this one because I feel like we really started seeing Bilbo's like character development happening. And of course, we'll go through like the plots and everything,
Mm-hmm.
like our notes on it. But like, we really started seeing him kind of like becoming confident, but like also you're starting to see how the ring is affecting him
Mm-hmm.
like very slowly, but you're like, oh, it makes sense when, especially when you get to like Lord of the Rings. When like I just remember that scene where Gandalf's like, give me the ring, and he turns to that like creature like really quick, and you're like, whoa, wait
Right.
a minute.
Demon.
So starting to see those kind of like bits and pieces or those little things being dropped in there, how he's like having his hand over his pocket a lot, or like
Lying about it.
yeah, lying about it. And then like even when they're like in the forest with the spiders and like the ring drops and he goes to get it and that creature is there, he like kills the creature as if the creature was trying to take the ring when it wasn't. The ring was literally just next to his leg. And he
Mm-hmm.
like kills the creature and he grabs the ring and he's like, mine. And I was like, ooh,
Mm-hmm.
here we go. Starting
Right.
to get a little juicy. I really liked the second one. a lot more. Not a lot more. I guess I don't even know how to like compare it to the first one, but I think because there was just more like action and depth
Mhm.
happening, or like I guess more plot line. But I mean, each movie has a plot line, but
Right.
like I don't know. This one was interesting to me. I wasn't as annoyed with Thorin this time. Like he had his moments, but like I don't know. I feel like this time it wasn't that. I'm trying to think what it is that like stood out to me more than like the first one. Like obviously it was still very much like Thorin is like trying to accomplish his journey and like, achieve his destiny and all of
Mhm.
that. And oh yeah, Gandalf wasn't really in this one
Yeah.
either. Which I thought was interesting, which I think that happens in Lord of the Rings too as well.
Yeah, because they think that he's
Because
dead.
they think he's dead, right? So yeah, he kind of just like leaves them and they have to kind of figure it out on their own, which I think
Very
is really
Aslan.
cool. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're like,
So I think you're right, like so yeah, I think that also I think maybe that's what it is. It's like Gandalf isn't there, so they have to like figure it out. So you're really starting to see like what their characters are capable of, like
Mhm.
throughout the movie. And then of course Legolas comes back. He's like in there, Orlando Bloom,
Mhm.
all the elves and stuff. So it's like introducing those people that like we know about in like
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings too, which is great. But overall I think I liked it. Smaug as a villain, still very much I'm like, I don't care. Like I'm just kind of like, you're a dragon that likes gold and you're upset because they want to just live where they're supposed to live, one.
Right.
But like I don't really get his deal.
Yeah.
Like it's like he just wants to live amongst gold forever.
He wants to sleep under the gold. I'm like, this is very dramatic. Like,
Yeah. I'm like,
you're
you want to
alluding.
burn down an entire town because what? I was like, what? Like him being upset, like, oh, those people from Lake Town are like, they're the reason. And so he's like, I'm gonna show you what revenge really is. And I'm like, why are we burning down a town? I
Right.
don't I don't understand. Like, what is your problem? Um,
Yeah.
but overall, I thought it was great. I like this one.
Right. That might be something too that who knows might be explained better in the books because obviously there's only so much that they can put
Yeah.
into the movies. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that just is like their lame heart's desire or goal.
Yeah.
And then the book also I think explains why the ending is so abrupt because it's all one book and they had to just kind of like divide
Mhm.
it. And it's funny that you're like, this ending is so weird. And I like love the ending because it's so dramatic. I hate it from like a perspective of, oh my God, now I have to wait a year to see what happens
Mhm.
next. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel like second movies and trilogies usually end in like a oh no kind of way. Like
Mm.
I feel like the first one is usually like you introduce all these characters
Right,
and
right.
then they go through some struggle and then it ends and they're like, yay. And then the second one like really tries their life and then
Yeah,
ends and they're
yeah.
like, ooh, like Cedric
Mhm.
Diggory is dead. Cause that's not like the second in a
Yeah,
trilogy.
it's like
It's
in the
like
middle. Yeah.
it's in the middle, like when stuff starts to get really serious and you're like, oh no, we could die. Like we could
Yeah.
legitimately.
Okay, because I just realized Goblet of Fire is also my favorite book of the Harry Potter series.
It's
Like
so good.
it's my favorite one out of all of them. So that makes sense. That tracks.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before too, because I like my favorite, like the Cheetah Girls is like the second one.
Mhm.
My favorite High School
Mhm.
Musical is the second one. I know yours is the third, and
Yeah.
I totally understand why. I think though, like part of that is just that you are familiar with the characters, so you're not being introduced, but it's you don't
Mhm.
have that pressure of the ending, you
Yeah.
know? Because like High School Musical 3 makes me sad, like when they jump and it's like the similar scene to the
Uh.
first one, and you're like, it's over. Like I don't want it to be over. Um, so maybe that's why. But I agree. I think I wrote that down. Like it was a lot more adventurous than the first one. Like there were a lot more like cool, I don't know, like fighting scenes,
Yeah, the
like
action scenes look
adventuring.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think another thing that this series is really good at is introducing like a bunch of characters. They have the advantage that most people who are going to go see The Hobbit have seen Lord of the Rings. So if they
Mhm.
introduce characters like Elrond or Legolas, who, I mean, they have the benefit of the fact that they're like immortal, so they can just be like, oh
Mhm.
yes, they were alive here
Yeah,
500
right.
years ago.
Mhm.
You know who they are, you know who Gandalf is. But then they did a good job. Like, I think it's good that they introduced like Bard and Lake Town and all those people, even though we knew about it in the first movie, they introduced those people in the second movie. Um, and even like Beorn, the person in the woods, like they did a good job of introducing in the first movie, like the dwarves and like Radagast, and then
Mhm.
bringing back in like Saruman and Galadriel and like all these people, you know,
Yeah.
and then like introducing more people. Maybe it's because they're so long and they have time,
Mhm.
but I've definitely read series where I'm like, who is this person? Who is
Yeah,
this
does it
person?
I feel like how they introduce them, it doesn't feel overwhelming though.
No.
Like I'm like, oh, okay, they're a key person to the plot, so it makes sense why we're talking about them.
Yes, they don't just introduce people as like plot devices
Mhm.
or like someone to kill for dramatic effect. It's like
Yeah.
all these people are here for a reason.
Mhm.
And maybe like I even think about in the first movie when Radagast, or as you call him, Wilderness Man, is introduced, like Gandalf is literally talking about him. He's like, yeah, because there are these group of wizards, and there's one that lives in
Mhm.
the forest. His name is Radagast, and then it like, you know,
Shows yep, him.
switches to
Yeah.
Radagast, and you're like, oh, okay, that's this guy.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought they did a really good job of that because, like I said, I've definitely read books or watched movies and shows that I'm like, who are you? Like, I don't know who this person
Who's
is.
you again? Oh,
Right.
okay.
So, okay, let's get into the plot details before we get too carried away talking about
Right.
the
Because y'all,
overarching.
we go into 10, we can go to 10,000 different directions just so you're aware if this is your first time experiencing
Right.
this.
Right. I've seen like TikToks about that, about how women have conversations and it's like just like ping ponging, like
Yep.
they're completely different subjects. And it's like, oh, that reminds me of this. And it's like,
Mhm.
there's like a guy in the room, like, how does point A relate to point B? And it
Every
just,
time.
there's just one little thing that
Mhm.
reminds us, you know. But anyway, so onto the movie. So we open 12 months prior to the end of the first movie in the village of Bree. And it's actually really cute because, um, the inn that Thorin goes into, I guess maybe not cute is the right word, but it calls back to the Fellowship of the Ring because
Mhm.
that's where the hobbits go to look for Gandalf, and that's where they run into Aragorn, and you know that whole like dramatic Frodo with the ring
Yeah.
scene happens. So it was cool that they had like almost parallel scenes because Thorin is kind of like the Aragorn kind of this
Mm,
movie. I feel like
yeah, a
Aragorn
little.
Aragorn has better morals than Thorin a lot of the time,
Yeah.
but they have similar like vibes, I guess.
Mhm.
So he goes into the prancing pony. People are giving him weird looks because he's kind of like on the run, basically.
Yeah.
And then Gandalf shows up. And I tried to put in the opening line. It's hard because it's not necessarily the opening line because the opening line is technically like people talking in the back. But the first line spoken by a main character is by Gandalf, and he says, "Mind if I join you?" to Thorin, and he sits
Mhm.
down. Um, and then he's like, "I know who you are. Basically, you're Thorin." He's like, "I know that you're Gandalf," and he tells him, well. Thorin tells him that he's looking for Thrain, his father,
Yeah.
because he heard he was alive, and Gandalf
Mhm.
was like, "I don't know about that."
I don't
Right? Yeah,
know.
he's like, well, on the subject of your dad, I told him that he should go retake the mountain, and he didn't. And you should also. I intercepted this in Black speech, which I believe is the language that they speak in Mordor. It's like
Mhm.
evil language, basically.
Got it.
Um, and people are trying to kill you, so you might as well, because they're trying to kill you anyway. So you might as well
Yeah.
just do it. And he says two things that I thought were like poignant. That dragon has sat there long enough. I really like that
Mm.
line. And you can wait no longer. So thoughts on that whole. Oh, and then he also Thorin is like, "This is no chance meeting, is it?" And Gandalf is like, "No, it's not. It's really not."
Nothing with Gandalf is by chance. He does everything on purpose.
Right. So, what'd you think of this opening?
Yeah, I wrote down one quote was like, "Take back your homeland," which is I
Mhm.
think what Gandalf says to Thorin. And so I wrote like a little quick analysis, really quick, and I was just like, it's like there's a generational mission for Thorin. It's like he has to complete the mission that his father couldn't do, or even his grandfather couldn't do. And so I wrote like it could also relate to like God and us. Like his purpose for us isn't just for us. Like it's for the generations, obviously before us, but also after us. And it reminded me of the song like The Blessing. Like, you know,
Mm,
may his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations from your children to their children and their
right.
children and their children. So I thought of that when he said that to him. Like it was just like Thorin's mission is not just about him. It's just like he has to reestablish his family's legacy pretty much by doing this. So
Right.
I thought that was really cool. Um, I didn't understand the two men that were looking at him crazy. I didn't know if it was just kind of like they're just bad men in the inn or whatever, but like they kind of like looked at him like they were gonna do something. So then Gandalf came and then they left, and I was just like, okay, maybe it was just kind of like to show like Thorin was
Mhm.
in danger or something, or like people were after him, like you said.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought it was a good opening scene because then Gandalf's like, that's why we need a burglar, and it's like Bilbo comes, and we're like,
Mhm.
hey, I know him.
Right.
And of course, while I'm watching, I didn't realize it was a year before The Hobbit until they said 12 months later. I said, oh, this is a flashback.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. No, that was me the first time I watched too. I was like, why
I
are
was
you
like,
acting like you don't
I was
know
like,
each other?
okay, this
And
is
then
okay.
and then it clicked.
Mm.
Yeah. What was I gonna say about, oh yeah, I think what's interesting too about like what you said about generational blessings is that then there's also like generational curses because it's not Thorin's fault that he has to go
Mhm.
take the mountain. Technically it's Thor's fault because he got too greedy.
Yep.
And, like we see the gold later in this movie and I literally wrote in my notes, who needs all this gold? Like you can't even walk through it, that's how much gold
No. Mm-mm.
is in there. And then his dad, Thrain, is like, I'm not gonna do that. So it's like this has fallen upon him. He's like,
Yeah.
I didn't choose to do this. And that feels really relatable when you think about like, just patterns that you notice in your family or things that people have done or haven't done that you're like, now I have to undo this. And that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff that we have to fight through, we didn't choose. Um,
Hmm.
but
Absolutely.
if you don't choose to deal with it, your kids are going to choose to deal with it.
Yeah, which is so like for me because I'm just like if I don't end this, like my kids, or even it might skip a generation and go to their kids or
Right.
something. Like if I don't end this with me, like my future kids could be dealing with this, and that I think would probably break my heart a
Mm,
lot, to know that I could have stopped something from happening and I didn't.
right. So one thing I thought was interesting about this conversation too is that Thorin's thing is like, we don't have the Arkenstone to unite the
Mhm.
dwarves. And in my head, I'm like, you guys were united before you had the Arkenstone.
Right.
So why do you think that you need it? Like
Yeah.
that it's the thing that will bring you together. And then of course Gandalf is like, okay, so we'll bring in a burglar. But part of me is wonders like, did Gandalf just say that to get Thorin where he needs to be, even though
Maybe.
Thorin thinks that it's like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like Thorin thinks
Yeah, no,
it's done
because
done right.
even when he said, you just said that, but then I was thinking like, but like the stone was just like a thing that your grandfather thought was really pretty and wanted to keep because it just continued on with the whole like image thing that he had with like the gold and like being the king and the whole image thing, with him being obsessed with like what everything looks like. So I was like, I'm not really sure how that like united everyone because it was really just something your grandfather took for himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
So I thought that was a really great setup. And then it leads right into Bilbo, who,
mhm.
after they say, like, oh, we're going to need a burglar, it flashes forward to Bilbo, who his like character development in this movie, despite the fact that he's kind of like going like this a little bit. It's
Yes.
like he's becoming more bold, but then also the ring is making him crazy.
Yeah.
Um, so it's and Thorin's character arc too is a little like this to me. Like
Mhm.
in it,
Mhm.
it's really very much an arch where you're like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. No, because he's like, he starts to do okay. And then I'm like, so you're going to do that again like you did in the last movie?
right,
Like, again, which I guess is like they're flawed. They're not going to completely change.
right,
But yeah, I
right.
agree.
So then Bilbo's on the lookout. He sees the wargs. He sees Azog, who also does not really appear very much in this movie. Um, and he reports back, and he's like, "Oh, the wargs are close by," and they're like, I think Gandalf says like, "Oh, they didn't even hear you," like, and they're all really proud of him or whatever. They're depending on him now to
Right.
tell them like what's up. And then Bilbo's also like, "I saw something else out there. I don't know what that thing was. It looked like a huge bear." And Gandalf is like, "You don't say." And they're like, "Do you know what that is? Did you know that that thing would be here?" And he's like, "Maybe I might have
I
known.
might know him, you know.
I
I
might
might know
know
a
a guy."
guy.
They're like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "We have to take shelter nearby because orcs are now like moving into lands."
Yeah.
That's a whole theme in this movie. They're moving into places where they should not be. Where they didn't have like dominion, I guess,
Yeah.
before. And Gandalf is like, "There's a shelter nearby." And they're like, "Is it safe?" And he's like,
It might. I don't know. We might die,
he
but
says, yeah. And he's like, yeah. They're like, "Is the guy who lives there an ally?" And he goes, "He will help us or he will kill us." And they're like, "Oh." And Thorin's like, "I guess we have no choice." And this is where I'm like, okay, Thorin, good job. Because he's like, I have no choice. I'm just going to listen to Gandalf.
Yep.
I'm not going to resist.
Yep.
So then they run from the orcs into this house. This giant bear looking thing almost breaks into the house. They close the door on him, and Gandalf is like, "That is our host."
Yeah,
And
we're kicking out of his own house, guys. Can't do that.
right. And so then he tells them that that guy's name is Beorn. He's a skin changer. Sometimes he's a bear thing. He's a beast thing. And then sometimes he's a man. So are you gonna ask something?
Oh no, I was just saying in my notes, I didn't really get his name at first. I was like, Beorn. I was like, I'm just gonna call him Beowulf.
That's what I call him in my head too by accident.
I was like, I mean, that still tracks. It's fine.
I wonder if it's supposed to be like a play on the word like bear. I don't know.
Maybe.
Because he's like a bear. Ariel sent me a TikTok one time about how J.R.R. Tolkien was like great, or maybe it was a TikTok or a tweet or both, about how he was great at like naming things.
Yeah.
Because I've never come upon a name in this series that I'm like, that doesn't feel right. Like as weird as it is, I'm like, yeah, like that's right. That's the correct name. So he was so imaginative. God really gave him the gift of imagination.
Yeah. Sure.
So yeah. So thoughts about any of that before we get into like Beorn changing into like
Oh. Yeah, I kind of was just writing like my life thoughts as I was typing it. I was like, the host is a skin changer. Bayon, I literally didn't catch his name. I was like, I'm gonna call him Beowulf. He's not very fond of dwarves, so I was like, cool. Conflict. I said fork arm, ill. Oh, this is where we kind of see Bilbo and the ring, where he's kind of like has his hand over his pocket because he doesn't want people to like know. And there's like a scene, I think, where the orcs are talking to Soren. Am I mistaken? Or like I see this shadow, and I was like, is Soren the shadow?
Yeah, so so the person that they think is the necromancer is Sauron, and what happens?
That's how you say his name. Got it.
It's okay if you're reading it. I can tell you. Also, even you writing like Bayon is funny to me because they're British. So I'm like, I wonder, because this reminds me of Ragnarok. There's that like thing that Thor fights in the beginning.
Yes.
I thought that thing's name was Serta for the longest time. It's Surtur with an R at the end, but it's the way because Thor's like Serta, and I'm like,
yeah.
oh, Serta. In
right.
It's not. There's an R.
Wow.
So that's funny. Anyway, Azog is, I don't know, he's like outside, he gets summoned by a different orc who's like, the master is calling you. And I'm like, that's very
right. Because he's really focused on just like getting revenge on Thorin, but like they're like, no, the master is so Soren is like, no, you need to prepare for this war that's coming because we're about to fight and kill all these people. And so then like Forkarm's like, okay, cool. And he sends, again, changed his name because, I like to describe characters basically what they look like or like some feature of them. So I think his name was Bolg, but I call him Wide Eye because his eye. And so he sends Wide Eye on the mission instead. So
Yes. And Azog, like one of the big things in this movie, I feel like, is that he's just like afraid of everything and everyone. Like all
yes.
the orcs are, because he sees the beast, it's like on guard around the house, and he's like, I'm not messing with that beast. Like, I'm gonna go. Um, and yeah, then he goes to Sauron, and Sauron is like, there's war coming, and he's like, you promised me Thorin's head, and Sauron's like, do I answer to you? I don't remember that.
Like, you work for me. Did we
Right.
forget?
Right, which is funny because if you think about the way that he treated that one orc that disappointed him in the first place, is the
Mhm.
way Sauron treats him
Yep.
in the movie, except he doesn't kill him,
Yeah.
like, yet, because he hasn't
Right.
gotten to the point where
Mhm.
he's so useless.
Where he's like disposable to him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, war's coming, you're gonna lead my armies, blah blah blah, which is obviously preface for Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
Um, so then he sends Bolg, or as you call him, White Eye, to go and hunt
Yeah.
the dwarves. And then Beorn the next day, he changes. Well, he changes that in the night back into a man. He comes into the house. And then the
So
next,
he's not like a human though, right?
no, I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
like when he's like not a beast.
Right.
Maybe he
Because I
might.
wrote he's now human. Like I was like, I don't know what.
Well, I think when Gandalf was describing him, he said that he was like either a beast or a strong man. So he might be. He might be, because I don't think he has any like powers like the wizards or the
Yeah.
elves, and he's
Mhm.
definitely not a dwarf or a hobbit.
Mhm.
So human, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
So he becomes person-like. And
Yeah.
they're having breakfast. It's a very like cute, farmy,
Mhm.
feel. And then he talks about like the orcs and how they're in the land, and he tells this really sad story about how they killed, tortured, enslaved his entire family, and he's
Yeah.
the only one left, and he hates orcs. And then he tells them that the necromancer, who is Sauron once again, of I don't know how to pronounce this place, Dol Guldur, the
Mhm.
place, the evil, scary place.
Yeah.
That guy is allied with the orcs, which in my head I'm like, duh. Like, of course they are. Um, and then Gandalf is like, okay, we're gonna take the Elven road to where we need to go. And Beorn's like, you'll be killed by orcs before you even get there. How can I help you? After giving this very dramatic little speech about like, I hate dwarves, they're greedy, blah blah blah. And he's like, but I hate orcs more.
It's
Like,
like that. What is it? The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
friend,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, this whole movie is very, and Lord of the Rings too. It's like
Yeah.
we don't like the elves and the dwarves, like
Mhm. Don't like each other.
but we
But
hate Sauron more.
mhm.
Like I, you know, um. So my question to you is like, what do you think the point of this man is? Like this skin changer man, because he only appears. I actually don't remember if he appears in the third one. It'll be a surprise to me. But what do you think was his point, like in this movie? This whole like little divergence.
I think it was probably just kind of like a setup for like their mission or like
Mm-hmm.
the main point of the like movie. Um or like, setting it up for, not really, I guess Lord of the Rings, but even the last movie. Um because I was just like I wrote like he told his testimony in the morning. Like I was just like he just basically just told them what happened to him and how he survived.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and he was just like, yeah, y'all need to get to this mountain like before it's too late. Like
Yeah.
go complete this mission you need to do, pretty much. And I wrote that down too when he said like dwarves are greedy and blind, I think he said, but he hates orcs more. And he even offers to help them out by giving them ponies. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's like just that quote. It's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's like I'm not very fond of you, but we have a common enemy, so I might as well help you. So I think he was just, to help them get started on the journey to the mountain.
Right. He helps them more than they know too, because then when they reach the Elven Gate, one of the dwarves says like, "Oh, it's like luck is on our side. None of the orcs attacked us." And Gandalf is like, and he looks off in the distance and he sees the beast, and it's like, okay,
Hmm.
clearly the beast was like protecting them on the
Yeah.
way over. Um, so I thought that was funny because we think a lot of things are luck sometimes, and it reminds me of that prayer, like God protect me from things seen and unseen,
Yeah.
and like how many unseen things have we been protected from, like even
Hmm.
today,
Yeah.
um we don't know. So now they are, well, did you have anything else to say about Beorn before we move on to the The Mirkwood.
No, because I got the Elven Gate stuff next. So
Yeah. Yeah. So they reach this elven gate, and it reminds me of that scene in Finding Nemo where Dory is told, like, swim through it, not over it. And then they get there, and Marlin's like, I don't like the look of this thing. Let's swim over it. And then they almost die because he
Mhm.
doesn't listen. Um, so then they get there, and Bilbo's like, this place feels sick. Like he says, it feels like
Mhm.
there's a disease upon it. His ring starts going off with
Yep, it's like
fear in his
thumping in his
pocket.
pocket. You hear the drum. Yeah.
Yeah, he starts getting that weird like possessed thing that happens to
Mhm.
Frodo in Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings, where the ring's like ah, and
Yeah,
you know,
because he
um,
gets that like flash or whatever, and then like it comes back. And
yeah,
at the same time, is it Gandalf kind of remembering what Galadriel said to him or something? Or is it Bilbo seeing that? Because I couldn't really figure that out.
it's with Gandalf, and I think it seems like she's like long distance communicating with him,
Okay,
which I
that's
was like, did not know that your powers reach that far. That's
it
terrifying.
scares me.
Yeah. So yeah, so they're outside this forest, and Gandalf, Gandalf is a seer. You can't tell me that he's not. He's a seer
Yeah.
and a prophet.
Because
And
the way this man was speaking in tongues, you can't play. Don't play with
hmm
me.
And he knew what was there before it even revealed himself. He was like, I know you're there. Come out.
Hmm.
We're not gonna play this game today.
Yep.
And I was like, period. That's like weirdly one of my favorite scenes, and we'll get to it.
He
Um,
does something like that too, I think, in Lord of the Rings too, where he goes somewhere and does that, I want to say. Unless I'm just mixing the same scene in my head from this movie.
maybe there are a lot of scenes in Lord of the Rings, so
Yeah.
it's hard to
That's
remember right at this moment.
oh yeah. I'm thinking about when he like basically does the exorcism on the king.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love that scene too.
that's a good one. That's a good
That
scene.
I feel like we're gonna be on that scene for like 45 minutes. Into that
Oh
movie.
God. When we get to Lord of the Rings, I'm gonna be yeah.
Yeah,
So
The
many.
Two Towers is my favorite movie of that series too. It's so good, partially because of that, and partially because of the Ents. I love the Ents so much. But anyway, let's not.
Yeah, right. Gotta go back. Gotta go back.
Okay, they're at the Elven Gate,
Hmm.
and Galadriel is like long distance telepathically communicating with Gandalf, and she's like, something's going on. She warns him about the necromancer and
Yep.
tells him to go to the tombs in the high mountains called the High
Mhm.
Fells. He like moves something aside, and then he gets this like flash of this vision of like the eye of Sauron,
Yeah.
and he's like, that's not good.
Hmm.
um so then he's like, oh, let loose the pony so they can go back to the master, but keep mine because I'm going. And they're like, what? Why are you leaving? And he's like, I love how he never answers. They're like, where are you going? And he's like,
I don't have to tell you guys
shut
anything.
up. Like, you know? Um, and so then, and he tells Thorin, do not go into the mountain without me. Which, when you hear that watching that the first time, you're like, this man's about to go into the mountain with himself. I just know.
Yeah.
So then he leaves. And then he also warns, before he leaves, he warns Bilbo and the dwarves of um illusions and things haunting their minds. And then he says to Bilbo, something like, you've changed.
I
You're
wrote that. I
oh,
wrote that down.
go ahead, tell us.
He said, you've changed, Bilbo Baggins. You're not the same Hobbit from the Shire. And when he said it, I was like, he's saying it like it's not a good change.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that he says it's like he's noticing something's different or like off. And like it's like he's waiting for Bilbo to kind of be like, oh yeah, I have this thing. But like Bilbo's like, yeah, I found something. Like he just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I found something. And he's like, okay, what did you find? He's like, my courage. And I was like, so
Mm-hmm. He
it's
like
like he's
can barely get the
lying to
words.
just
He's like, my courage. Like I found my
and
courage.
he's just starting to lie, like
Mm-hmm.
he's lying about having the ring. And I just put in my note there, like I think it's just showing the beginning of like the ring's powers on him, because the ring
Yeah,
basically makes you like deceptive to people.
right.
And so he's like already trying to protect it.
Yeah, and Gandalf once again reminds me of God because he gives Bilbo the chance. He's like, has something changed? Like
Mm-hmm.
when like it kind of reminds me of like Adam and Eve.
Yep.
When God is like, who told you you were naked? He knows.
Mhm. Yeah.
He knows.
Yeah.
But he's waiting to see like,
What?
are you
Yep.
gonna
Are
lie?
you going
Are you
to
gonna
answer me honestly? Yeah.
right? Because in the Lord of the Rings movies, when Gandalf needs to find the ring, he shows up to Bilbo Baggins' house and he's like, so what's
Mhm.
up? I know you have the ring.
Yep.
You've been lying to me all these years, but I know you have
For
it.
centuries, my dude.
Right. Right.
Centuries.
Yeah. So just tell me the truth, and give me the ring. So I thought that's like a really, I don't know, sad scene to me because
Mhm.
he's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna go now.
Yep.
You take care of yourself. Take it easy. Um, and then he leaves.
hmm
And they walk in, and have you ever seen Into the Tall Grass?
No.
It's a horrible movie, but it's like this movie where they're driving through their, I don't know where they're going, but it's like this family and they're driving and they're passing this like, like tall grass like you see in the Carolinas.
hmm
And they hear a boy saying like, help me, like from inside the grass. So they decide to go in. But there's a curse on the grass where if you go in, you can't get out and you're just stuck like walking in the grass. Um, Over and over again, they see all these like horrible things. So this reminds me of that. Um,
You mean
it,
like when they're in the forest?
yeah.
Yeah.
So at first they're good. They're like
Yeah.
walking in a straight line. They're along the
Mhm.
path. And then at one point, they all start to like lose it. They're like, we
Yeah, they're
lost
getting
the
like
path.
delirious. All of a sudden
Yeah.
the path is like gone and they're like trying to find it, but then like the forest starts playing tricks on their minds and like
Yeah.
one dwarf is like he's like, "Oh, I found this thing." And he's like, "No, that's mine." And then he's like, "No, this is mine." And just like and Bill was like, "Wait a second.
Yeah.
Guys,
Yeah.
something's wrong."
They don't know like what day it is. Bilbo looks back and sees himself and
Mhm.
like he's like, this does not make sense.
Yeah.
So like do you think that there is a reason that they lost the path? Like is because I was trying to pay attention. I'm like, is there a point where something happens and they lose the path? Or do you think it's just like what happens to everybody?
Well, I think it's probably because of like the spiders. I
Mhm.
think because it's like the forest that the spiders are in. I'm like, maybe that's the way the spider gets like their prey. Basically, they kind of confuse them so they don't know where they are and they don't
Mhm.
know, what's going on. So they can just kind of trap them.
Right.
Because as we see later on, it's like Bilbo climbs up to the top of the trees and like sees them out and he's like, "Oh my gosh, we were in the right spot." And he comes back and like everyone's gone. And he's
Right.
like, "Whoa, what happened?" And then the big spider comes. And I named him Aragog like in Harry Potter because I was like, this is pretty much Harry Potter where the spiders come. And like he's there and ready to eat him and puts him in a web egg. That's what I called
Yeah.
it.
But that's true. Yeah. Well, I think like the forest. Well, one, the spiders are not supposed to be there. Like Toriel says that, like, because Thranduil's like, I told you guys to get rid of the spiders, and she's like, we did, and more came. So it's like
Mm,
evil is invading the lands.
yeah.
Um, and one thing I noticed, I don't know if this has anything to do with it or if it is the illusion, but they lost the path when they started to like complain.
Mm.
Um, and that reminded me of
Oh,
the
sorry, go ahead.
Israelites, like in the
Yes, that's what I was about
wilderness.
to say. Mhm.
Yeah, I don't remember who said what, but they started being like, I don't know, I don't even know what they said, like it's hot or whatever. Like they start to complain about. I don't know what time of the day and I
Yeah.
wrote like the forest is exposing what's already there because they're like they have this enmity with each other, like they're brothers, but then they also have like tension and whatever,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
so I feel like that whole thing just exposed, like brought out what was already there.
Mhm.
Um, And then I think it's very prophetic that Bilbo's like, we need to find the sun to get out of here. We need to go up so we can
Yeah.
see. And when he goes up, he notices like we're so much closer
Mhm.
than we think because
Yeah.
we can't see the way out, but when you go up, you can see. And I was like, that's a word. That's
That's
really good.
good. That's good.
But then he falls back
Mhm.
down, and then gets trapped, is caught up by
Mhm.
a spider, just like Frodo, in Return of the
Yep.
King. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, so I'm like, which I'm like, that's interesting. I wonder if Gollum knew that Bilbo had this past experience with spiders, that he like almost got killed by a spider, but that he was able to defeat a spider in the
Mhm.
past. Um,
Maybe.
so that's kind of interesting. Um, but then Bilbo manages to break out of his little, what'd you
Mhm.
call it? A web
His
egg?
web egg, because that's
Yeah,
what it looked like. He stabbed the spider, and then like he gets out, and then like all the spiders come, and they're like, "We're gonna eat all of you, kill you, whatever." He
right.
puts the ring on, and then
hear them,
disappears, and then all of a sudden he can understand what they're saying.
Disgusting. I hate the sound of their voices.
I don't like the sound of them crawling. Like the voices were fine to me, because whatever. And so this is when like he hears what they're saying, which I didn't really write down. I just know it's basically like they just were trying to kill them, pretty much. He kills the main spider, saves everybody, and then they start fighting all the spiders and all of that.
Let's talk about when he kills the main spider though, because it's one of my, even though I hate the spider scene, that's one of my favorite scenes because he's like, well, because like you said, he can start to hear them now. He knows like, what they're planning on doing. And then he starts fighting the spider. The spider cannot see him. It's like, where is it? Where is it?
Yeah.
And then he takes off the ring and he's like, I'm right here. And then stabs the spider. I'm like, yes! Like, it's so good. Because in the first movie, he's like, I don't know how to use a sword. And now he's like, me and these spiders, it's on sight when I see a spider right now.
No, that's true, because even when he like uses the sword more in the movie, he kind of like looks at it like, oh, cool, we're really getting the hang of this thing.
Yeah. And then the spider's like, it stings. And he's like, that's a cool name, I'm gonna name it Sting. And that sword reappears.
In
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is just a cool, like, overall scene. I was like, Bilbo better develop as a character. And then the rest of the dwarves get free.
Yeah, and they start fighting and battling each other. That scene was pretty cool to me, though. I really like that.
They all like band together and rip off like one of the legs of the spider.
Like, they literally like rip one apart.
It's like, okay, that's one way to do it, I guess.
Hey, teamwork makes the dream work. Okay.
Right.
Oh yeah, and then a spider comes and takes Bilbo, and then he loses the ring. And I wrote like the sounds of the spiders, as we just talked about, is like very uncomfy. Like just the sound of them, like I was like, like even I was watching it on my TV. I was watching on my TV, but I was like, I just imagined watching it with headphones on. I was like, no. I was like, no, that would have made me want to die. Right. So yeah, so then like he gets, I think I want to say he kills the spider that took him, because he ends up getting down to where the ring is. And we see like, I feel like we see here is like the ring brings out the more aggressive side of Bilbo, because like you've never seen him kill anyone like this before.
I'm like, it's dead. It's dead.
Yeah, like it was overkill.
You're
like
still stabbing it.
He's literally stabbing it, and then like after it, he grabs the ring and he's like, mine. And I was like, oh. But then it's like he kind of realizes like, oh, hold on.
Right.
Like right after, he's like, oh shoot, what's going on?
I was gonna ask you about that, because then after he kills the spider, he has the scene where he like sits down and he like kind of puts his hand on his mouth and he like gasps. And what do you think like that meant for him? Like, I think you just answered it, but do you have anything else?
I think, I mean, again, I think it's just, I think it showed him like a side of him that he doesn't really access like that. Like he's capable of, I guess he's capable of more than he thinks. Like, he's just like, I'm just a simple hobbit. I just want to, be in the Shire and be at peace. But like the ring like brought out this like really like aggressive, also almost kind of like, I guess not pathological isn't the word, but it's just like, because he's not like a psychopath, they're a sociopath, but like it brings out this kind of like unhinged side of him, because he just like, he literally thought the creature wanted the ring, but it was like I said earlier, like it was just like right by his leg, like it wasn't like he was trying to take it. So it's like he becomes like a whole version of himself that he doesn't even like kind of recognize, I guess. And maybe that kind of scared him a little bit. And that's why he kind of had that moment.
Yeah. I think I agree. He realized like the brutality of what he had just done and was like, oh my God, like,
yeah,
who is that? So then the elves swoop in. You see Legolas. He always has the coolest.
Yes. His action scenes, this entire movie, amazing. Top tier.
I mean, nothing will ever beat the scene of him like riding down the stairs on that.
Yes.
Or him killing that one, like, I think they're called oliphants or something, the big elephant. Those scenes are really cool, but his scenes in this movie are very cool.
Yes.
So then they come down because they're the elves of the Mirkwood, and they point their bows at all the dwarves, but then we hear Killy and he's screaming from up above, and a spider is attacking him, and then Toriel comes in and saves him.
It was the pause for me.
So okay, let's pause right here, because I think that they wanted this scene to be like a love at first sight kind of thing.
Yeah, it wasn't. It didn't work for me, at least. I was like, I literally wrote Killy is trapped when the Wasp, I call her the Wasp, y'all, I don't call her by her name this movie, comes in to save him. And I put in parentheses, eye roll, because I'm like, I literally don't care about this. Like, they try really hard to make us want them to be together. And I'm like,
we don't. And it's like nothing against either of the actors, because I love Killy and I think Evangeline Lilly is a great actress as well. Her British accent in this movie, not the best I've ever heard, but as a whole, she's a good actress. But they have no chemistry,
none
at all.
Zero.
At all. Like, even not to skip ahead, but when she saves him later in the movie, it reminds me of when Arwen saves Frodo, and I'm like, that's not that's
right. So this romance you guys are trying to do, is it working?
Right. So that happens. Whatever. We'll talk more about that later, because they have more scenes in this movie. And I was texting Ariel. I was like, this is such a blight on this movie, because she's also, this is non-canon. I don't think she exists at all in The Hobbit. I think they added it in. So like, I'm totally for them adding more female characters in, but let's not create romance where there is none. Let's not. We don't need to.
Like, she could have just been like a cool elf chick who like saves him. Maybe they have a banter here and there, but like, y'all trying to make it like this, oh, she's really like enamored by him. I'm like, no, it's not working.
Yeah. So anyway, so then she saves him, and then there's this cute little like foreshadowing of like,
yes, I wrote that part down too.
Legolas says, "Who is this goblin mutant?" Like, that's my wee lad Gimli.
I'm like, it's okay, you guys are gonna be besties. It's fine. It's fine. We know what's gonna happen.
It's very on brand, him opening by calling him a goblin mutant. It's very fitting. So then there's tension between the dwarves and the elves. Bilbo is gone. Nobody knows where he is. And then the elves are like, we're putting you in jail. I don't know why.
Yeah, because he accuses Thorin of stealing the sword.
Oh, that's right.
It was like, he was like, no, this was given to me. And he's like, you're lying. And then they just take them as captives.
Right. So then we go into the Halls of Mirkwood. I don't know what the official title, Mirkwood Castle, whatever this place is.
I literally wrote it, Elf Kingdom.
Yes. And it's like one of my favorite places. It's so freaking cool. If I had a castle, I feel like it would look like that, because it has trees inside. It's so beautiful. And you're like walking along the trees, and there's like mist and steam, and it's like kind of like dimly lit, like you're in Abercrombie and Fitch. But like, and then there's like
throwback
starlight and music, and it's just super cool. And then you have this like you see like Thranduil from his like crown. I love his crown. It's so cool.
Oh, it's so, I think I wrote that down. I literally was like, this crown is killing.
I want it. I want one. So I literally looked it up before on Amazon. I'm like, I want one. They're so cool. So, you know, we see Lee Pace as Thranduil again, and he's in his element. Like I even noted like his body language, like he's just so like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like, he's just, I don't know, he just acts this role really well. He does. And it's like his acting is almost like, I don't know if you can call acting minimalist, but it kind of is. It's like he gives a little, but he also gives a lot. Like he barely blinks at all, if at all. I don't ever see him blink. And it's like his head movements are very like, you know?
Like, the subtle movement, like he barely moves his body.
Yeah, and even his like facial expressions, his eyes are almost like dead sometimes, but it's like somehow full of them. I'm like, how do you do this? You better act.
Great.
He just seems so, and I love like fae and like all things like this, like fantasy. So it very much encapsulates like what I read a lot of the time about like high fae who are like really old and they almost seem like really disinterested. Like there's that
Mhm.
whole scene where he has the argument with Thorin. He's like, 100 years is nothing to an elf. And then it zooms in on his face and he's like, I can wait. And I'm like, you better act. Come on.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
good. So anyway,
yeah.
um,
I wrote, okay, this has nothing to do with what we're talking
go
about,
ahead.
but I basically wrote like, because I just thought about how like Orlando Bloom never has to work again. Like, I was like, he's basically doing these movies because he likes it. Like, he
Yeah.
loves to play the character at this
Yeah.
point. Because I was like, he was in Lord of the Rings. After that whole series, I think like a year or two later, he did Pirates.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did I was like, yeah, you did two blockbuster series back to back that
Mm-hmm.
made bajillions of dollars. You
Right.
came back for The Hobbit just because you like playing Legolas.
Just for
I'm
love.
sorry.
No, seriously. The same is true about Ian McKellen, who
Yeah,
continues
he's
to act.
set for life.
Yeah, Ian McKellen literally almost didn't do, I want to say X-Men because he was in Lord of the Rings, or the opposite, but I think that it's
Yeah,
that way.
he did. Yep, he did a
Like
two series too,
those
very
are
close
two
together.
huge series right
Yep.
back to, and then he appears like in the live action Beauty and the Beast and you're like, Ian McKellen, you don't need to check.
You don't need this check.
You don't. You're just here
You
for the
guys are
vibes.
sitting on money right now.
Yeah, but he's such like he feels like my grandpa to me. He's just such a cute old man. I want
Yeah.
to meet him and be like,
I'm pretty sure I'm maybe I'm making this up, but I'm pretty sure he's like, yeah, anytime they'd ask me, I'd do it. Like if to play Gandalf pretty much. Like he's like, yeah,
he
I'll do
did
it
that.
anytime.
He was no, because he said in an interview like, I'm pretty sure Gandalf is like 2,000 years old, so I could act
Like,
it.
so I could literally play him even if I'm 98.
Literally. And he would be great. But
Yep.
yeah, so that's true. Orlando Bloom and Ian McKellen, good set for the
Yep.
rest of their lives.
Yep.
So then there's this Killy Torio.
I literally wrote, they keep trying to make Killy and the Wasp happen, and I don't want it.
But it gets worse because then Legolas gets jealous over
And
it.
I'm like, there's a love triangle.
and there's no there's
literally
chemistry.
no reason for there to be one.
No, there's no chemistry between Legolas and Torio, and there's no chemistry between Torio and Killy. And I've seen Evangeline Lilly have chemistry with people on Lost and in Ant-Man. So I'm like, I know she has chemistry. But with these two people right now, it's not giving.
Yeah, I literally was like, I wrote that down too. I was like, Legolas has a crush on the Wasp, and I don't care. I literally like, we don't need this.
And it just feels so dumb too, because they allude to the fact that they're like at least 600 years old. So I'm like, this feels very immature that you guys have crushes on each other that are uncommunicated. You're centuries old. Grow up.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
So weird. So weird. Oh, one thing that I wrote down was when Thorin and Lee Pace, I call him the drama king.
Well, that's his name.
Yeah. And they're like arguing about the whole like, you didn't come to our help, we needed you kind of thing, like getting on him about like, we had to face like dragon fire, like you have no idea what that was like. And then he like gets up in his face and his face transforms. I was like, okay, magic makeup, period. And then he was like, yeah, don't talk to me about dragon fire. I know exactly what that feels like.
Right.
And I was like,
that scene is good. Yeah. So that after this whole gross little Killy-Toriel scene, whatever. Thranduil tries to help Thorin. He's basically like, we will help you in exchange for rocks. Like, we just want these white gems which I'm like, why? You're immortal. Why do you want rocks from the mountain?
Again, is it the image thing? Like, it's just like, oh, we have this pretty rock. Like, I don't
know if they're magic. I don't know. That might be something I'd have to look into. I was like, that's dumb. But yeah, so he offers him help, and Thorin loses it, starts screaming at him, and then Thranduil drops his glamour and is like, his face like reminds me of like rotten fruit. Like that's what it looks like. When I'm always like, but also I think about like Richard Armitage like acting in that scene. I would not have been able to contain myself. Like if he was up, because they're obviously in real life. There's he's just like in his face like with tremors. This must have been absurd to film. But anyway, so he's like, I have battled myself, the dragons of the north. So don't talk to me about dragons. And and it gives us more context as to why
He's very like shut off to it.
Yeah, why they were like, oh, we're not about to mess with the dragon. We're not about to do that. So then Thorin's like, we're not going to take your help, and he gets put in prison. And Balin is like, I keep calling him like Balin the Peacekeeper in my notes. The entire series, he's like, so did you ask for help? And he's like, no. And then he like cusses him out in like Dwarvish. And
like, he's like, what did you say? He's like, I called him and he's like, oh, okay, cool, great, amazing, right. Love that.
So we're never getting out of here. Great. Yeah, awesome. So then Bilbo is inside the castle and he's sneaking around.
Oh, sorry. Also, I didn't know that Lee Pace was Legolas's dad. I literally was like, huh?
I was like, until this time watching.
I'm telling you, I did not know until this movie. Okay, Legolas was like father. I was like father. I was like, oh my god. I was like, oh, that's his dad.
Well, that's the interesting thing about like the elves and fae is that
right, because they all look the same age.
People who are the same age, if not like someone who's older than somebody else, and it's like grandfather, and you're like, what? Like. What are you talking about?
I was like, oh, okay, cool. All right.
Yeah. I don't remember which book I was reading, but it was like, yeah, he's like 80. He's a newborn, basically. And I was like, what? He's like still a teenager at 80. And I'm like, I cannot imagine being in my teens for 80 years. That sounds horrible. Anyway, so Bilbo's sneaking around. He overhears Tauriel and Thranduil talking about Legolas's crush on Tauriel, which I'm like, once again, grow up, all of you grow up. These are adults. Right. And she's like, I didn't think you would approve of him with me. And he's like, you're right, I would not. But I'm just like, which is so funny to me. And okay, thoughts on this. I feel like they have more chemistry than her and any of the other guys. Like, I almost feel like a Tauriel Thranduil thing would have been more believable. Just because I feel like Thranduil has chemistry with everybody that he talks to.
Yeah. It's just like the way he carries himself. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It's like his vibe. It's like he's flirting with you, but not.
Right. But he really is plotting your death.
Yeah.
I'm kind of into that. I am.
I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe I just kind of was like, I didn't really have much interest in her character like that. So. Yeah.
After this, I'm going to go on Wattpad and see if anybody has made and send them to you from the plot screenshots to you, because I'm sure that someone somewhere out there.
Oh, yeah. All people on the internet need is just a little bit of chemistry.
One scene, one look. And they're like,
one little wink, and it's over.
Right. So, yeah. So he's basically like, yeah, you're not good enough for Legolas, but just so you know, Legolas likes you. I just want you to be careful. And that is, like I said, hilarious to me because he's such a jerk. And then I literally wrote in my notes, then Tauriel and Killy talk about rocks and stars. Legolas stares in angst from afar. Like, that's really the summary.
No, that's literally what happened. I didn't even write about it in my notes because I'm pretty sure I was like on my phone during that scene. Like, okay.
I'm literally like, and then like the elvish music is playing in the background. I'm like, let's not do this.
Again, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
After you give us Arwen and Aragorn, you think I'm gonna?
No.
Are you kidding? Are you kidding? No. Like, let's not do this. So anyway, Bilbo is sneaking around still. He overhears the elves in charge of like the crates talk about how the crates are going to a bargeman who we later find out is Bard. And then he steals some keys. He frees the dwarves. When he approaches the dwarves, one of them is like, Bilbo! And I literally was like, shh, like at me. And Balin is like, keep your voice down. Once again, Balin has my heart. I feel like he's like everybody's grandpa. So he frees them, sneaks them into barrels. And this scene is cool too, because I also feel like it shows character development where he's like, get in the barrels. And the dwarves are like, no. And Thorin is like, just listen to him. Listen to him because he knows what he's talking about. And I was like, yes, period. But then he drops the crates into the river, finds a way to drop himself into the river, and they're all like, yay, Bilbo! And they're floating away, but then they get trapped by elves.
The elves are like, they're escaping, and they shut the gate.
and they shut the gate. But then at the same time as they shut the gate,
Show up.
the orcs show up because they knew where there was a breach in the wall. And I was like, interesting. They had talked about that. They were like, we're not going to attack the palace, but I know where there's like one little way in. I just need one little way in, and I'll get in, and that'll be good. And I was like, that sounds like the enemy to me. It really does. So this scene that happens like after, is one of my favorite scenes. This like whole river fight.
Yes.
Scenario. Well, before they fight in the river, though, Killy tries to go up and open.
Yep.
The gate, and he gets shot in the leg by the bolt, and he's like,
and
then
like a cursed arrow or something,
poisonous.
It has like poison in it or something.
Yeah. So he gets shot. Toriel saves him again.
Yep.
And then Toriel saves Legolas. There were a lot of like cool aim scenes because Bull goes to shoot Legolas, but she shoots his arrow instead of shooting him. And I was like, that's actually really cool. And then
that whole scene was really great.
Yeah. And then I looked down and I actually don't know who opened the gate, but Keely, then they start floating down the river. And this is like, go ahead.
I wrote Keely opens the gate and seizes the day, which is like a Newsies reference. I don't know if you don't really watch musicals like that. It's fine. But anyone who's watched Newsies, there's a song called Seize the Day, and they're like, open the gate and seize the day. So when he opened the gate, I was like, Killy open the gate and seize the day.
But I'm glad you had that moment. But, I mean, it's fine because I feel like this movie reminds me of the randomest things too. So.
And then he jumps back into his barrel.
Yeah.
And Gimli's dad has one of the coolest moments where he like gets out of the thing and like starts fighting all the orcs out of his barrel. Did you remember that scene?
The one who was rolling?
Yes.
I don't think that was Gimli's dad.
No.
Yeah.
Be him.
I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure it was Bomber. Like there's like one dwarf that's like much bigger than the other dwarves.
The other red with the big beard. Dang.
That's Bomber. That's not going.
I literally wrote yes, Gimli's dad. I got really excited.
I'm sorry, but that is one of my favorite scenes too, because he like this whole like the fighting is just really cool, and they're like helping each other. Like there's that one scene where like Thorin throws it to somebody, throws it to somebody, and throws it to Philly, and then he like throws it up. And then that is one of my favorite scenes where Bomber uses like, I don't know, he finds something and he like throws himself up out of the water and just starts like, I don't know, like Mario Kart, like down.
Yes, it was really great.
And then he gets stuck, so then he uses the barrel and it's just like fighting people, and then somehow manages to like jump back into another barrel.
I loved it. It was great. And then of course Legolas has a friggin' dope sequence when he's just killing it. I was just like, wow, this is great. I
literally disrespects the heck out of them by using their heads as stepping stools for himself. I'm like,
you're like, okay.
Right. I mean, if you must.
Right. You really have to, but I guess.
So let's see what happens then. So then I also wrote down that this would be a cool like water ride like at a theme park, because at first I was like, this would be a cool like roller coaster, but then I was like, no, this would be a cool water ride, like where you're escaping the orcs and you're just like
or it's like a really cool video game, because I remember, do you remember the days when like movies used to have video games, like a movie would come out and they would have like video games to go with them, which are basically like, I think they're like first person ones where you're like one of the characters or a main character, and you have
I'm sure that there's one for this movie.
Okay. I just remember the PS2 days where I was just like, I just remember they would like advertise, after the movie, which is always great. That would be really dope.
They do that with like the Marvel movies, and like they make them into Lego games. My sister and I like to play them sometimes. So it's actually really cool. They recreate scenes like almost exactly, and you play as like a little Lego Scarlet Witch or so yeah, I'm sure we can look into that too. I'm sure there's somewhere.
Or if anyone in the comments can let us know.
Right.
Go ahead. No, I was saying basically what I wrote, like, meanwhile, this is when Gandalf is at the mountain, because I wrote on the way to the mountain, because while that whole scene happens, then it's like, oh, meanwhile, Gandalf is like at the mountain, which was it that mountain from Lord of the Rings 3? Was it the one where like Frodo, Sam, and Gollum go to, or that's a volcano?
I don't think so. That's in Mordor, where Sauron is. This is
That,
like so.
it,
Well,
for some reason, it just looked like that place to me.
probably because it's like dark and they
Yeah.
have like similar vibes. Well, before that happens, one thing I had written about the river scene is it reminds me of Moses and the Egyptians, how they were like the water was like to their advantage, where they like drowned and defeated their enemies. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then Legolas, well, Toriel saves Legolas from Bolg by shooting his arrow with another arrow. The dwarves escape. The elves keep one orc to bring
Yeah.
back to Thranduil, and then they see more orcs chasing down the dwarves. And then we pan to Gandalf in what they call the High Fells. I wrote in my notes, this would have been so much easier if he could fly, and I stand by that statement. Because this old man is sliding down, like
They should have just given him flying powers, honestly.
it would have, but I guess in the Fellowship of the Ring, when he's stuck in Saruman's tower, that whole point would have been completely moot if he couldn't, if he could fly. But anyway, so then he's in this dark place. He turns around, Radagast is behind him, and he's like, "This is not a nice place to meet," which is a cute line. I feel like that's what I would say.
I'm like, you brought me all the way here? Okay.
Cool. Yeah. And then they find 9 empty tombs, the ring wraiths, which appear in Lord of the Rings. I don't know if they appear again in this series. I don't remember if they appear in the next movie, but one of them appeared in the first one. I think Radagast like fought him, the main, like the Witch King, the one who rides that like thing.
Yeah.
And Gandalf is like, these ring wraiths, first of all, their like tombs are like busted. So you're like, they're not in their tombs. That's not good. And Gandalf is like, they only serve one master. There's literally only one person that they could be out here serving. And Radagast is like, because Radagast is like, oh, a human couldn't have done this. And Gandalf is like, why do you guys keep saying this? Obviously, this is not a human. And I wrote Prophet Seer Gandalf as well. And he's like, war is coming. And then he says, I have to go back and warn my friends. I have put them in danger. I'm like, your friends. I love that. So what are your thoughts on this whole wilderness man in the tomb with Gandalf scene?
Honestly, all I wrote was wilderness man and like excitement. John
okay.
Point. I think I might have blanked out at that scene, but as I said, your plot points would fill in with where I was, because my next set was like when they introduce Luke Evans, like the Bard guy, which I didn't realize his name was just Bard. I kept calling him the Bard. So in my notes,
Bard the Bowman, technically. Well, because people in this like series, they don't have last names. So it's like Aragorn, son of Arathorn, you know, or like Legolas of Mirkwood or whatever. So yeah. Just like once again, I didn't realize that Oakenshield was not Thor's name for a long time. So yeah, so the dwarves float to safety. Killy is struggling for his life, but Thorin, this is where I feel like Thorin starts to annoy me again, because he's like, we can't stop. Philly's like, he needs stitches, and Thorin is like, wrap his leg because we've got to go.
Right.
You have 2 minutes to wrap his leg, and everyone's like, okay, all right then. And then someone sneaks up on them. And this is another cool scene because he shoots the thing out of like their hands that they're going to, and he's like, the next time you try to throw something at me, I will kill you. And I'm like, period. And then once again, Vaughn the peacekeeper comes in. He's like, wait, let's
hey guys, wait a minute.
Right. So he's basically like, so I noticed that you're poor and we have money. So why don't we bribe you into getting us to safety? And because he notices that he's from Lake Town, which is the place across from Erebor, and they need to get into Lake Town so that they can get into the mountain. So yes, what are your thoughts on like Luke Evans coming in as Bard? Like what are your thoughts on him as like a character in this whole thing?
I think like he's that character that obviously is going to have like a much bigger role in the last movie, I'm pretty sure, because they're setting that up, obviously, as we see. Um, but I think he's just very like he's just very conflicted about helping them.
Mhm.
Like throughout the movie, like he's just like, I really want to help y'all, but also like I really don't really want to get involved
Mhm.
because like my ancestors tried to fight a dragon and it didn't go well. So I'm
Yeah.
not trying to do this thing with you guys. Like I'll help you, but like after you use my boat, like we don't need to really be messing with each other like that.
Right. I also think this is when we realize, like, or at least this is when I realized, and maybe some of the dwarves start to realize it too. Like, this situation did not just affect the
Mm,
dwarves; it affected Lake Town, and
yep.
they weren't even doing anything wrong.
No,
Like,
you're literally just the town next door.
they
Just
literally were just the town next door. Yeah,
like they were just minding their
they were
business.
just the casualties. So I'm kind of like, I understand why Bart is like, I don't know if I want to help you guys,
Yeah.
or when he's like, oh, you're Thorin. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm. I'm
Yep.
good. I'm good. I have
Oh,
kids.
we remember you well. We
Yes.
remember what happened.
Right. So then quick pan back to Thranduil, Legolas, and Toriel. They're threatening this orc, and the orc is talking about coming war. Thranduil, I'm like, why does this man speak in poetic monologue? Because it's like you first see the scene and it's like on him and he's talking. I don't even know. He's like talking in riddles to this orc. I'm like, what's the question that you
Right.
have to ask the orc? Just ask him. You can tell he is immortal and he has all the time in the world to say what
Yeah,
he wants to say.
he enjoys this part. He's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I know what I'm about to do, but it's fine.
Right. And so then Toriel finds out Killy is dying through the orc, tries to kill him. Thranduil's like, no. But then the orc starts talking about basically the coming of Sauron. And then
Mhm.
Thranduil kills him. And what does Legolas say? He's like, you said you were going to set him free. And he's like, I set his
Head.
miserable
Yep.
head free,
Free
or no,
from.
his wretched head free from his miserable shoulder. Like,
Yeah, I mean, you weren't lying.
technically, like, on a technicality, I'll give you that. Anyway, so we keep getting like set up for Lord of the Rings, and
Mhm.
then Thranduil's like nobody gets into the kingdom and nobody gets out. But then they're like, okay, what about Toriel? And like Legolas is like, Toriel, and they're like,
Yeah, she just dipped. She
she's
went.
gone.
Oh God.
So I'm like, here we go, girl,
Yeah,
stay.
I just didn't under. I was just like, why do you have these deep feelings about Killy? Like,
Because
where
they
did
talk about rocks and stars.
like I literally wrote, I don't know why the Wasp has these deep feelings about Killy, but okay. Like okay,
I
I guess.
I really hate the love at first sight plot, like point, like trope in general, because I feel like it's really hard to pull off.
Yeah, because I'm like, even with them, I'm like, was it really love at first sight? Like it didn't even feel like that to me.
No. I like they talked for like a little bit. Like I feel like maybe it would have been more I think once again it's like these actors just don't have chemistry with each other, but it might have been more believable if they had more like if the dwarves were imprisoned for longer, if there was more of like a sequence, but it's like you had one conversation and now you have these like deep
Deep
feelings.
feelings where you need to go rescue him and save his life. I'm like,
Right.
okay.
Like I'm confused. I'm just really confused. Um because I feel like that's not obviously for me to say that's not realistic in a movie like this. I feel like is redundant, but I feel like we are supposed to be able to relate on like the emotional part of it, and I do feel like that part I'm kind of like I don't know because like when I
Wasn't
think about
needed.
right when I think about like Aragorn and Arwen, they fell in love because they kind of like grew up together in a way. Like he was like raised in Rivendell, so they knew each other very well. He like knew her father, and that partially makes their romance like believable. But this,
Mhm.
I'm like, no, like I'm not gonna go off into the woods for some stranger I just met because they were cute and they talked to me for like an hour, So whatever. But I also think that that's like I remember reading somewhere about how like the time for men and women to fall in love it's longer for women than it is for men. That apparently, obviously, I'm not a man, so any men in the comments, feel free to politely share your thoughts on this, but like we'll fall in love in like shorter periods of time.
Mm.
But for us, it's more like I need to get to know you for just like a little bit longer and then decide if I'm in love with you. So maybe that's where I'm having the issue where I'm like, that's not true. Like you
I
can't be
mean,
this man.
she's also a woman written by a man, so that
That's
also could be part of it.
that's a fair that's a fair point. That is a fair point. Which is also not to get like too on a tangent, but that also makes me think of why like maybe like women tend to fall in love with like fictional characters more, and it's not necessarily because it's escapist, but it's just because it's like you get to know the person's personality
Mm-hmm.
more so than it's just like I don't know. It's just very female gaze to me.
Yeah.
But we don't have to talk about that because I feel like
Anyway,
that's a whole other thing.
continuing.
Anyway, so then the dwarves are with Bard. They're in the boat. They are talking about how they don't trust him while actively in his boat. And they keep calling him the Bargeman. And Bilbo's like, his name is Bard. They're like, how do you know that? And he's like, because I asked him. So I like that's so cute. I love that scene. So then Gimli's dad, Gloin, is stingy with the money that they need to pay. And they're like, we know you have more money. He's like, no, I don't. But then they see the Lonely Mountain. He's like, take all my money here. I've seen where we're going. I've seen what I needed to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then they see the guards from afar, and Bard is like, I need you guys to trust me. You have really no other choice but to trust me, but I need to sneak you past. And then he puts them in barrels with fish. You look like you have thoughts on that.
I literally wrote, I can't even imagine the smell of being trapped under fish.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I know it smells crazy in there. I
Mm-hmm.
know, especially because they've been sweating and fight. No. Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
No. I just.
But they had to do it because they
Yeah.
had to live.
Yeah.
But Lake Town, well, new Lake Town 2.0, reminds me of like Pirates of the Caribbean at the beginning, like when they're in that like really poor, well, not obviously not where like Elizabeth Swann lives, but like where the poor people live. It's like very dark, very gloomy, very like wet. Everything looks really like run down, and
I
you
mean,
can tell.
we live on the water, so that.
Yeah, but when you saw Dale in like Lake Town, like at the beginning of the last movie, it was colorful. It was like the Shire, and you see like the effects of the dragon and the evil and all of that.
Yeah, everyone's impressed.
Yeah. So then he gets into a little scuffle with Alfred at the front, and I'm like, you guys really just wanted to make all the bad characters ugly because you think.
I literally call him Randall from Recess.
Oh my god.
I was like, he's Randall from Recess.
Him and like the master. I don't know if he has a name, but they call him that. So that's
They
what
call him the master. I don't think
this hair
the comb over
is so ugly, but I think they want us to know like these people are good because then Luke Evans is hot, and so it's like okay, so he's
right.
He's good. He's the good one. So I thought that was funny, but he gets into a little scuffle. Bard is intelligent. He uses his smarts to be like, if you jump the fish in, people are gonna revolt, and he's like, all right, I'll let them in. And then we see this little scene where Alfred reminds me of Haman in the Bible because he's like feeding the master all these things that may not even be true. He's like, people are talking about revolting or having an election and they don't even want you to beat and blah blah blah, and you know who might be responsible for all this. Like, you're a rat. You're just such a rat.
Gross.
So yeah, and then I also really like the line where he's like, we know where you live, and Bard is like, small town Alfred, everyone knows where everyone lives. Like, I love that energy.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on like this entrance, this introduction to Dale and like the city of Lake Town and all of that?
I literally only wrote that Randall from Recess is annoying. The master, ew. And
why is he so big also? Like, why is he so big?
He's the richest person, right?
But he's like big, like he's tall.
Oh, tall. I was thinking like big this way. I was like, probably because he's rich and he's eating everything that nobody, everyone's dying and is poor, but he's eating everything up and keeping for himself.
He's greedy.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to, because I'm like, they're humans, so they're supposed to look like. And that's probably what it is, because we're seeing things from like the dwarves' perspective.
That's true.
They're like smaller, but like the humans are just like regular human size, so they look ginormous compared to the dwarves.
Yeah, it's funny watching them stand in the middle of all the humans.
Yeah,
they're so tiny and so cute. So then the woman sees the dwarves coming out of the fish crates, which is important because then she gossips to the it's like it's very much giving like small town or small school where like everyone literally knows everything. The dwarves get into his house through the toilet. I literally texted Ariel, I would rather die than survive like this. I literally would rather die.
Especially because it's a time where there was no plumbing.
Because it's like a like almost like a porta potty.
Yes.
The fact that it's even big enough that you could come out of it. No.
Like it's because I wrote the shower I would need after one, fighting for my life, sweating, probably haven't even bathed because of everything going on. Sat in a barrel of fish for God knows how long. And then you want me to come out through a toilet? I'd have been like, yeah, no. Kill me right now.
Right, leave me to die. This is too much. No. The cost is too great. Fighting a dragon, okay. Coming out of a toilet, no.
No, thank you. I'm all set.
Right. So then they come into the house. His kids are super cute. I love them. And yeah, I know. They have no mom. We don't really know why, but she's gone. He alludes to that. And then Thorin sees a dwarvish weapon. Go ahead.
No, I was saying maybe she died.
No, she definitely died. I just don't know how.
How old is he when the dragon thing happened?
He was not alive. It was his ancestor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, never mind then. Because I was like, maybe his wife got killed by the dragon. I was like, that wouldn't make sense.
They're poor, and so it's probably something related to that sickness or something. Yeah. So then Thorin sees like I forget what they call it, the like arrow thing, that the bow that Girion shot from. It's still up there, and it triggers him because he's like, that reminds me when I saw the dragon and the fire, and he's like a little flashback.
Yeah.
And then Balin the storyteller, because he alternates between peacemaker and storyteller. He talks about Girion and the dragon and how he like
got the scale off of him or something. Like he found a way to.
Well, that's what his son says. Balin says that he missed, but his son is like, no, he loosened a scale. That's like the rumor. And then Dwalin is like, that's just a fairy story. That's not true. And Thorin catches an attitude again, and he's like, if the aim of man had been true that day, then things would have been very different. And I'm like, are you believing the Lake Town fought to help you guys?
The reason why the dragon even came was because of your
grandfather.
So
what's up?
About what are we talking about?
Exactly. So that was very annoying to me. I'm like, I know you're not blaming this little. They weren't even alive. Please,
literally did not exist.
So anyway, I'm like, okay, why didn't you guys kill the dragon then? The dragon was in your home. Thorin loves to blame other people for his issues. I'm like, that's why I'm like, his character arc is very like, woo, like, you're serious. Yeah. Anyway, so then Bard gives them weapons, and they don't like the weapons that they're getting, which I'm like,
because they're too big. Is that what it is, or it's just like,
I don't know. They're just like, these aren't real weapons. And he's like, I'm literally impoverished. Like, this is a poor town, it's run down, and I'm a single father of 3 children. What do you want from me? And Balin tries to be like, guys, this is good. We've made do with less. And they're like, no, we need more. They're like greedy for better. It's whatever. Yeah. Which, do your weapons really matter if you're fighting a dragon?
No.
Because
all he has to do is blow some fire out and you're done. So
yeah. Did you have something else that you wanted to?
No, because we're about to get into it.
Yeah. So then the people in the town start talking about the dwarves, and they start talking about like the prophecy of Doran's folk. And as this is happening, someone says Thorin's name, and Bard is like, that name sounds really familiar. Why do I know that name? And he starts to repeat this prophecy. Did I write it down? He says, there it is. Well, actually, hold on. Sorry, I skipped a scene. Let's rewind a little bit. We get this little pan to Toriel and Legolas in the woods, because Toriel out there and Legolas comes, and he's like, where are you going? And she's like, I have to help. Like, the spiders and the orcs, they shouldn't even be in these lands. And if we keep allowing them to do this, they're just going to keep doing it more. She says, with every victory, this evil will grow. And she also says, when did we let evil become stronger than us?
Yes, I wrote that down too. I was like, that's a good line.
That's such a good line. And it's such an idea of like, she basically says to him, like, we're part of this world too, you know, and we're not like, it reminds me of Esther too, of like, if you don't do this, God will raise up somebody else. And also, you know, that quote about like, um, oh, when they came for the blank, we stayed silent. And when they came for us, there was nobody left to speak up. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that too. Like she's like, we are privileged enough to be elves in the forest with all these powers that the orcs fear us for now. But if we just continue to allow them to take over these lands, they're going to just, and they're going to take us too. So we might as well just fight. And Legolas is like, you can see a little bit of Thranduil in him. He's like, I don't know if that's really our job. And she's like, I don't care. I'm still going. You can come. What did you think of that scene?
No, I thought that was a really good scene. That's why I wrote down that quote, like, when did we let evil become stronger than us? And I was like, he can't even really debate with that, because it's just like, she's right. Like we know that we can like defeat this. Like, this isn't bigger than us. Like when did we allow, it's kind of like how we let sometimes just like allow the enemy to kind of run stuff, and like we like forget, like, oh wait a minute, like he actually doesn't have power. Like he actually doesn't have any authority over us. There's nowhere in the scriptures where it says he has any sort of authority over us. And so it's like we like kind of forget, like, no, we have authority over him. So it's like, when did we let evil become stronger than us? It's like reminding us, like, oh, wait a second, like this isn't bigger than me.
Yeah, so I really liked that. And also knowing like the fighting for other people is like fighting for humanity is fighting for me too, you know. Like we can't just turn a blind eye to everything else that's going on in the world. Obviously we can't be expected to fix everything that's going on in the world, but we can't just be content to live our own little lives and not ever care about other people. That's very selfish. It's a very selfish way of thinking. So anyway, so then we get back to Lake Town and the people are gossiping, as a small town does. And Bard is like, you know, Thorin, that name sounds familiar, and he starts recalling this prophecy, and it ends with, and the bell shall ring in gladness at the mountain king's return, but all will fail in sadness, and the lake shall shine and burn. And he's like, that's not good. So he runs to this little place where he finds a tapestry with Thorin's name. Thoughts on like just the prophecy, the gossiping, the fact that everybody is like, oh, I know what this means. This is like a sign of the times, basically.
I don't think I have much thoughts on that. Is that when he tells them to stay inside the house?
Yeah, he tells his son to guard these adult doors.
I wrote like Thorin never listens, and like this is why they get caught up in these fights or whatever, because, you know, I call him the Bard because that's what I thought his name was. So I wrote, the Bard told him to stay inside the house, and they tried to leave, and then they get captured by Randall and the Master. And I'm like, yeah, so if he just stayed inside, I don't think any of this would have happened. But
and the reason that they get caught, I realized this time, is so annoying, because they get caught trying to steal more weapons because they think that the weapons that they have aren't good enough. So I'm like, this, and because Killy thinks that he can handle more than he can handle, he's the one who drops all the weapons. So I'm like,
your leg is still injured, sir. Sit down.
I'm like, there's so much happening right now that just does not need to be happening. So then they get caught by the Master, or they get caught by them. They get brought into the Master. And the whole town, of course, gathers around because they have nothing better to do aside from watch this drama unfold. And Thorin, it's interesting because Thorin is like appealing to the greed in the city of Dale in general, but especially in the Master. And he's like, we have gems and all this stuff, and they're all like, ooh, treasure. Like, we've heard about the treasure in the mountain. And then Bard comes and he's like, do you guys remember what happened? I know you don't remember because you weren't around, but do you remember the stories of what happened to this town? So like, and then there's a Bard related to Girion reveal that happens. Where do you stand, like, in the Bard versus Thorin like debate debacle that's going on?
I'm very much a I'm going to mind my business type of person. So I would probably be like Bard in that. I'd be like, yeah, so I am not going to risk dying because one, I don't know this person.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that I know about this person is that if I get involved, I could die. And I got kids. So no. Like, that's why I was just kind of like, he was like, no, like our ancestors were killed because of them. And then like the master's like, well, wasn't it your ancestors that didn't even like kill the dragon? And it's like, sir, who asked you?
Right.
And so that's why like the, Bard says to Thorin, like, you have no right. And then Thorin's like, actually, I have every right. I'm
Yeah.
going to the mountain. Like, this is my legacy, whatever. I'm like,
Right.
cool, bro, go on your mission. Just leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm at in that.
Yeah, his ancestor was also the Lord of Dale. That's what they call him. So it's interesting that he's in this like lowly position now. I feel like I would be more on Thorin's side if his motivation was good, because his motivation is like we need to go back in and get the gold at this point,
Yeah.
and it's like you're focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah,
Like,
because even like with the, like you said, when the master is basically like, who are you? Like, why are you here? Kind of thing. And Thorin's telling him, and he's just like, I promise y'all, just like, I got hella gold, like, we can give it to you. And it's like, that's okay. Like you said, it's like that generational thing kind of like came out of him real quick.
mm-hmm. So then, of course, the master's like, of course, you can go get this gold for me. That would be cool. So then they have this whole trip to the mountain. They give them this whole fanfare. It reminds me of Palm Sunday because all the people are gathered around. But I'm like, where are you guys aren't going to help fight this dragon? You're just gonna be like, yes, bring us back the gold. It's like if you don't get killed by this dragon. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really interesting. And then one of the dwarves is missing. I called him Beefer last video, but I'm pretty sure his name is Bofer. But there is also a Beefer. I don't know which one he
Is
is.
he the, which one is he? Is he the one with the hat?
Yeah, the one who was asleep.
Yeah.
Which honestly, very relatable. But why did nobody wake him up? Just left him behind. Um, and then so he misses it. Well, before he misses it, Killy is banned from
Yeah.
going by Thorin, who's like
He's literally about to die.
he's
Like,
like white as a
pale.
sheet. Yeah.
Yep. And dying. And Thorin's like, yeah, you need to stay here and get better. He's like, no, what do you mean? Like, and I'm like, sir, you can't even stand right now. Please.
Right.
And
Right.
then this was another moment where I didn't realize characters were related.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that Philly was Kelly's brother.
Wait, what?
literally just thought. I literally just thought that they were like besties with similar
No,
names.
they're brothers. They have the same
I know.
name.
I know. I genuinely was like, oh, they're just like besties with like similar names. Like he was like, no, I'm gonna stay with my brother. And I was like, brother? I was like, wow.
Well, I think that Tolkien did that on purpose because the ones who are related have similar names, like Philly and Killy. And then I didn't realize Gloin, Gimli's dad, he says to there's one named Oin, and he's like, oh, my brother. And I mean, I guess that they could have been no, but they don't refer to each other as brother when they're not actually related. So
Right.
I was like,
See,
oh,
that's
they're
my thing. I didn't really, I thought it was kind of like I'm not going to leave my brother, kind of like,
no, that's his brother.
this is my brother. I love him. We're cool. No,
No, they're
that's
brothers.
blood brother.
Did you realize that Philly calls him uncle? That was what I was going to ask you. Because I was like, did this, is this the first time that this is revealed? Philly says to him, uncle, to Thorin. Did you realize that?
Oh, I didn't realize that either.
So Philly and Killy are his nephews.
Oh, okay. See, I was like, clearly I missed something in the first movie because
I don't know.
like, I feel like they didn't really say that they were brothers in the first movie. It was just kind of like they showed up to Bilbo's door and he was like, they said their names and I was like, oh, okay, cool.
I don't know actually. I don't remember in the movies, and I don't know in the books because, like I said, I haven't read The Hobbit yet. It's once I finish One of Us is next. Maybe I'll read The Hobbit. I probably will because now I need to know.
Let us know in the comments too, like what
Yes.
technology is, because I clearly did not realize the connections.
Right. So then Oin is like, I'm gonna stay with Killy, and Philly is also like, I'm gonna go. And there's this cute little moment where Thorin is like, you belong with the company. He's like, I belong with my brother. Like that's where I belong. And I was like, that would be me too.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, Stephanie's not going. Stephanie's dying. Yeah, I'm not. I'm good. Thank you so much. I'll
Yeah,
leave right here. Um,
absolutely me.
and I thought that was interesting too because it almost sets up Thorin for like the annoying way that he acts later when he acts like he doesn't even know Bilbo. It's like he is more valuing the mission over the people that are coming, where Philly is like, no, my heart is still in the right place. Like,
Yeah.
I know where my loyalty lies. If I'm gonna choose my brother over this gold, I'm gonna choose my brother. So
Yep.
anyway, so then Beaufort comes and he's like, oh, you guys missed the boat too. And then Gilly starts to die, like in the street. And so he's like, oh, and it's interesting because when they show up to Bard's door and Bard's like, oh, I'm done with doors. And they're like, please, no one else will help us. And this time I was like, no one will help you, but they'll take your gold. I'm confused. I'm really confused because they're sending you off to die. But when one of you is literally like, I need help, everyone's like, no, we don't mess with doors. I'm like, Palm Sunday. That's what this is.
Also, I was just also thinking like in a more like, I guess like systemic way, like that's kind of how society is. Like, I guess if you think about, not to make this a political thing, but the government, it's like the government will use people for whatever mission they need, for whatever thing that they need. And then it's like, I actually am dying and I need healthcare. And they're like, sorry, bro. I don't know. Don't know how I'm going to help you with that. Sorry. Good luck, though. You'll figure it out.
Yeah. No, it's true. I think there's a lot of like social commentary in a lot of these books / movies. Like the thing about fantasy that makes it so interesting is as much as it's like fantastical and sometimes ridiculous, is there's always something that you're like, I can see how this relates to real life.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then the dwarves, the not sick dwarves, they see what used to be Dale, and it's like completely burnt. And one of them calls it the Desolation of Smaug, which is like the book title when you read it in the book. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then Thorin is like, we're not gonna wait for Gandalf. And you're like,
but he told you to wait.
Do you remember when you didn't wait for Gandalf in the past and you almost got killed by the King? I'm like, oh my god, you're annoying me again. You had me for like a solid however long it's been up until this point, but you lost me again. I'm lost. So yeah, so then we pan back to Dol Guldur where Gandalf and Radagast are, and Gandalf is like, it's interesting the perspective that different people have on different situations, because Gandalf is like, the enemy is hiding, which means that he's not fully strong yet, because if he was, why would he be hiding? He doesn't need to.
Because he said there's like a spell concealing it to make it look like no one's there, like it's destitute.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, Seer Gandalf. He's like, I know you're here. And then he tells Radagast to send a message to Galadriel and to leave. And then Radagast is like, but what if it's a trap? And I don't know why, but I love this line. He's like, turn around and do not come back. It is undoubtedly a trap. And then goes in. I'm like, this energy right now is immaculate.
Love him.
And then starts speaking in tongues, basically. Yep. In Elvish, according to my captions, and starts commanding the evil to show itself. And
Lazarus come forth, except evil come forth, you know.
Right. And so we see Azog, like he's hiding with some of the wargs and the other orcs, and
like, oh, the wizard's here, we're gonna get him now. And it's like, no, you're not, but okay.
Aren't you embarrassed? Look how big you guys are, and you're hiding.
You're literally hiding.
Okay. So anyway, so we pan back to the dwarves. They're at the Lonely Mountain. They're at like the foot of it. They're looking for the door. And they're exactly where the map says they're supposed to be, but Thorin's like, it must be up.
Yeah. What? I said they're like really excited about it.
They are. At this point, they're very excited about it. They're like, it must be up. And Bilbo really, this whole movie to me, like, I'm like, the dwarves literally would have died so many times or failed without Bilbo. He stepped up this entire movie.
Yeah.
And Thorin almost left him to die as a thanks for it. So he finds the stairs up the side of the statue, and they're like, oh, you have a keen eye. But when you pan out, I'm like, how did you not see those stairs? Look how big they are. Oh my god. And this visual is really cool because it pans and you see them like climbing up the sword of the statue. And I'm like, actually, that's really cool. Whoever was on this visual team deserved their check. They really did. So they find the spot where they're supposed to put the key in, but the sun is going down and they still have not found the keyhole. They start freaking out. They start trying to break in, which you can't break in, not by might, not by power,
Right.
you know. And then they give up as soon as the sun goes down. They're like, well, I guess that's it.
This is over. It's
Even
like,
Balin. I'm like,
yeah, they're just like, whoa, and then they just start leaving. And then like Bilbo's like, no, come on, like we can't give up. Let's come on. And so then he tries to figure it out himself. And he's like, okay, the last light, which it is. And then it's like, oh, it's the moon. It's not the sun.
Right.
Because the moon technically is the last light of the day.
Right. Which is cool. And then the bird like knocks on it, kind of reminds me of like Noah's Ark a little bit. And then he's like, the last light, it's the light of the moon. And he almost kicks the key off the side. And Thorin catches it. And in my head, I'm like, how did he get back here?
So fast.
Like, were they already coming back up? Or did they run up when
Bilbo, when he was like, oh, it's the moon or whatever. Because Bilbo was kind of looking for the key. Like, he was like, oh, where's the key? They just had it. And he like accidentally like kicks it. And then Thorin comes and like puts his foot down and catches it. But yeah, I don't know how they got back so fast.
Yeah. So then the scene where they go back in is it's like a really beautiful scene to me, especially because Thorin and Balin remember what it's like. And I wrote this down. Thorin is like, they're like teary as they go in. And he says, I know these walls, these halls, this stone. You remember it, Balin. Chambers filled with golden light. And then Balin says, I remember. And I'm like, it's like the promised land. This is so nice. And then we pan and we see Balin having a conversation with Bilbo, and he's like, by the way, if you don't want to fight this dragon, you don't have to. You've done so much. It's a dragon. You might not have thought you would even get to this point. Just so you know, there's no shame in turning back. And Bilbo says, I promised I would do this, and I think I must try. And
oh, it's so like, it's like innocent, but it's very just genuine.
Yeah. To which the Shire music plays in the background, and then Balin says, it never ceases to amaze me, the courage of hobbits. And like Shire music continues to play. And okay, so then they see the Arkenstone on the wall, and they explain to Bilbo what the Arkenstone is. And it had me thinking, like, I wonder if the Arkenstone is supposed to represent like the Ark of the Covenant in a way, because it reminds me of like, I'm pretty sure there's a story in the Bible where they bring the Ark of the Covenant into battle because they think the Ark of the Covenant will help them. And then I think it gets taken. Because God is like, I am the one who gives you victory, not this thing that you guys made because I told you to make it. And it's interesting because it's literally called the Arkenstone. So I'm like, I wonder if this was intentional. Well, what are your thoughts on like them entering the chamber again and just like actually getting in?
It was kind of like that. It's like when you finally get to the place that you've been dreaming of getting to. I think it's like, one, obviously it brings back all the emotions of like his past to him. But two, it's like, yo, like I finally made it. Like it took all this time, almost dying to get here. But like we did it. Like I'm here, I'm back. I mean, obviously the mission isn't complete yet because there's still very much a dragon in there. But I think just being like, I am able to come back to the place that like I once lost is really powerful. It's kind of like that redemption. It's like, okay, I'm starting to like, I'm going to start taking back what's mine.
Right. It's probably really bittersweet too, because it reminds him, because he's there with Balin. Balin's the only one who remembers. I'm pretty sure everyone else was like born after. But it probably reminds him of all the people that he's lost as well. So it's this link. Yeah. And now it's also a reminder of like, okay, well, to keep this, we have to fight this dragon. So then we pan back to Gandalf. He's in Dol Guldur. Right. He's still speaking in tongues. And then at one point he breaks the curse or whatever, the spell that's on it, and Azog attacks him. And for a second I'm like, oh, Gandalf is an old man, because he like attacks him and he pushes him onto the ground, but then he just gets up and points his staff at Azog can't even come near him, and he every time he tries he's just like, oh, you know, like you know. So I thought that was cool. And this is like, for some reason, one of my favorite scenes, because Azog says to him like, we are legion, and
and
I'm like,
I wrote that down
literally straight out of the Bible.
I was like, oh, it's giving demons get sent into pigs off the cliff. Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Um, and I thought, I don't know, I just thought that whole scene was cool because when Gandalf looks down, he sees the army, and it's confirmation to him of like the things that I have been saying and
Mhm.
people have been telling me, you're crazy, this is just a human. And I was like, this is not, humans can't do this,
Mhm.
was right. Because like in like this the spiritual world too, I think people often want to hear like, whatever, like by this time next year, you're gonna be married, you're gonna have a
Yeah,
baby, you're gonna have a house, blah blah blah. But also
we
with
forget.
seeing the spiritual world comes like there is like a generational curse on your family. This
Yeah.
person in your life is a demonic, like
Hmm.
is sent like demonically to derail
Yeah,
your path.
there's not just all the good parts too. Like there's obviously we have the enemy for a reason. Like he's not just chilling by himself. Like there's so many other things involved with
Yeah.
that.
And there's a king in the Bible. I don't know if it's I don't even want to say because I don't remember which one it is, but there's so many in the, especially in like first and second Kings.
What
But
happened?
there's a prophet that comes to him to say something, and when he appears, the king is like, I don't even like it when you come because you always tell me bad things.
Hmm.
And it's like, that's just too bad because that's what God is saying, and you're sinning.
But
So
yeah, he has to warn you.
I'm gonna tell you, you
Yeah.
know, like if can you imagine how things would have been different if Noah was like, God, I don't like the negative energy you're giving me right now. Why are you
But
telling me?
that's how we are, right? If
Mm-hmm.
someone's like, hey, you really probably shouldn't do that, like there are going to be consequences to that. And it's like, you're just trying to keep me down and I don't really like the energy and vibe you're bringing, so I'm going to cut you off. Like I'm just not, you're really messing with my vibe and I don't want it. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, keep at it. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm just letting you know something bad is going to happen if you keep doing this, but
Yeah. So
good luck.
right. So if that happens to you, don't get discouraged because it definitely happens where you have like a vision or like a word for somebody and they react very poorly. You're like, you must be wrong. And it's like, I'm not usually wrong, but okay. Like if that's I kind of know when God says something to me, but okay, if that's what you want to think, then that's between you and God. That's no longer between you and me.
Yeah, no. And I think that's also like why I guess like I'm careful about the things that I tell people because I'm just always like, you know what? Let me make sure that this is God telling me to tell this person
Mm-hmm.
because God forbid it's like I tell you something and then it's like not even relevant to you or something, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like I think that's why it's like discernment is so important. So like when you actually know for sure that like, no, God told me this and you need to know this, then it's like, even if you that person is going to respond negatively, it's like, hey, I
Yeah.
was told to tell you. That's all I'm doing. I'm not telling you what else to
Right.
do. I'm just telling you.
Right. And so Gandalf is like, I just knew. I knew what I saw was true. And then he escapes. He like portals himself somehow. I'm like, so you can portal, but you can't fly? I don't understand. This is so dumb.
Logan, I need you to explain this. What's going on here?
Right. In the comments, please tell us, why can't Gandalf fly? I need to know. So then he sees like the darkness, the necromancer, and they fight. And then the darkness says something to him like, don't you know there's no light that can defeat darkness? I'm like, I'm pretty sure you were defeated before. So I
Right.
don't know what you're talking about because do you
Right.
have the ring currently? I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
You do not.
So shut up. And then Gandalf fights him off a little bit. It's like this really, it's kind of like Harry Potter. It's like the light and the dark and whatever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then the dark like kind of him, and
Gandalf really puts up a fight too, though. He really tries.
he sure does. And then the darkness pushes him back against the wall, and he sees the flaming eye and a man walking in the fire with like a
Yeah.
crown. And then Gandalf calls him by his name, which is Sauron. And so you're like, okay, it's very legit now.
Yeah,
Once again, it's kind of like Harry Potter, where they're like,
when Voldemort comes into his full form.
yeah, because before that they're like, Harry Potter, like you killed Cedric Diggory, like just admit it. And he's like, it was Voldemort. He's back. I don't know why you guys are insistent on not saying his name because just doing that, you're giving him more power by ignoring the fact that he's returning. So which I feel like is a word in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then we pan, and then Gandalf, like after this, he appears like one more time. I don't really know where he is at the end of the movie because I feel like he kind of disappears after this.
Well, he's in like this, they capture him. He's in like a cage thing. They show him in this like this
Yes,
thing.
you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. Yeah. So then we pan back to Bilbo, and he is inside. The dwarves are literally so afraid of this dragon that they are outside the
Yeah.
mountain. They're
Because
not even.
is the only one in the, I called it the gold room.
Yeah. So he goes in. He's like, I'm looking for a gem, and he looks and he sees this huge pile of gold, and he's like picking up random gem. I know I would have been like, I
I
don't
would
want to do this. Yeah, like overstimulated. Like, look how many gems there are in here, and you want me to find. And Balin's like, you'll just know. And he's like, what does that mean? Like, so then he like knocks something. He sees the dragon's eye, and then the tail moves, and he looks, and he's like,
Oh.
quite a big,
It's a
quite a
pretty large guy.
yeah. And once again, why is he asleep under all this gold? That is so dramatic. How did that happen? Why? I can't imagine that would be comfortable. So many
I
questions.
just don't get his deal. I'm just kind of like, this is what you wanted. Okay, I
Weird
get it.
flex, but okay, yeah.
Right.
So then Bilbo wakes him up by accident, and then he gets up, and then Bilbo puts on the ring.
Ring on.
But Smaug is like, I can literally smell you. I'm a dragon.
Right.
And I know that you have gold. He like somehow knows that he has gold that's like, he calls it really precious. And you're like, interesting. So I'm like, do dragons like sense gold? Like, is that what? Because Thranduil also says to Thorin, he almost like blames Thror. He's like, your grandfather, I warned him of what his greed would attract. And I'm like, that's really interesting. So I wonder if like the dragons have like a gold.
Maybe. I mean, that would make sense why Smaug needs to be laid up under all of it, but
maybe it keeps them alive or something.
maybe.
I don't know. Somebody please explain. I need to know.
Yeah.
And so then like Smaug and Bilbo decide to have like a chat because he's invisible.
Yeah. He just starts asking him like questions about like, the dwarves, and Bilbo like lies. He's like, nope, they're not here. Don't know why you think dwarves are here, but then he's like, I literally know what they smell like. Please stop lying to me.
Right. And Bilbo decides to appeal to Smaug's like pride. He's like, I just wanted to see like the great and terrible Smaug and blah blah blah. And I think it's interesting that Smaug like asks him who he is, and he starts describing himself with all these like kind of like cooler terms, and then he says like barrel rider, and that's the one that Smaug latches onto and starts calling him barrel rider. I'm like, the lowliest of all the things that he said that he done, that you're gonna refer to him as like interesting choice. He starts knocking down columns like chasing Bilbo, which I'm like, this doesn't seem very wise.
Right.
Infrastructure.
Holding up the
mountain, the whole mountain.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then
the stone like rolls by
Bilbo,
and he's like, dang it. Like, gotta go get this thing.
Right. So what do you think of like, I don't know, the introduction to Smaug in general before we get into like other people?
Yeah, I think like, again, like I said with Smaug, I'm just kind of like, I don't really get your deal, dude, but okay. You want to be in this gold. You're upset because Bilbo kind of interrupted that. So I don't know if it's like he thinks Bilbo is trying to take all this gold. Don't know how this Hobbit would be able to take all this gold from him, but I don't know. Something, I guess he's just kind of like, I don't know if he's just trying to read Bilbo, see what his vibe is, what's going on. But like, he's just very much like, you're not about to take any of this from me kind of thing. That's like Smaug's whole thing. Like, I will kill anybody that tries to take all of this from me, as we see later on.
Right. It's very dramatic. He's a very dramatic character.
Yeah. And he
unnecessarily.
all these like poetic speeches, and I'm just like, who cares?
Like bragging about himself. He says like my wings are a hurricane. It's like why are you monologuing about yourself right now? You have fire. You could kill him. Just kill him. I don't
Yeah,
understand. Like
we
are
do
you
that all the
lonely?
time with
Are you
villains.
lonely because you've been in this mountain for so long by yourself? Is that why you're talking?
Maybe he's like, I haven't spoken to anyone in a long time,
You're
so
getting old. Yeah.
might as well get it all out now.
Yeah.
Um,
So then because he gets up, he's huge. He rustles everything. And
yeah,
the dwarves hear him from outside and
and
Bard hears
then down
him.
to Lake Town. Yeah,
Yeah, it rustles all the way down to Lake Town and the kids are like, we're gonna die. And Bard's
yeah.
like, you might, honestly. I'm not
And
gonna
then
lie
he
to you.
takes the thing off the ceiling. He's like, all right, guess it's time to fight. And I'm like, okay.
Right. He's like, we have literally no other choice but to
Yeah.
fight. Killy is still dying on his table.
Oh, and
And
then the master and Randall take Bard. They're like, hey, sorry.
right. He just gets put in prison. And before that, the dwarves outside the mountain, they hear the rustling. And Balin tries to get Thorin to go in. And he's like, why would I risk my life for some burglar? And Balin's like, his name is Bilbo. What are you talking about?
First of all, oh, are we gonna act? We're gonna act like Bilbo hasn't been helping us this entire time, but okay.
I'm like, you owe Bilbo at least 8 savings for all that he's done for you so far. So that was very annoying. I was like, Thorin, I don't want to play this game again with you. I really, truly don't. I really
No.
don't. But Balin is like, I'm gonna need you to calm down. I'm gonna need you to talk some sense into you.
Gather it all the way together.
Right. And then back inside the mountain, Smaug is telling Bilbo that darkness is spreading, which is true. Some of the things that he says are like actually true. Like he's like, darkness is spreading, and it's paralleled with like Gandalf in the cage watching the orcs march out of Dol Guldur. There's also another interesting parallel that I like. He says like, "There's no blade that could kill me," and it parallels with like the arrow, the black arrow in Bard's hand.
Yeah.
But then he also tells Bilbo like, Thorin cares more about gold than you, and the Arkenstone
He
is going
says
to drive him insane. And
like, you're basically nothing to him. You're just a means to an end.
right. And I was like, part of this is true. Like, he's honestly like hurting him with the truth, I feel like, which I was like, that's an interesting ploy. It's kind of
a very villain thing to do.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's not like entirely true. Like I feel like Thorin is kind of on this like edge.
Yeah.
But it is partially true. And I think it colors Bilbo's distrust of him when Thorin eventually does run in. And his first question is, did you find the stone?
Mm-hmm.
And Bilbo's like, there's a dragon coming. He's like, but did you find the stone? And Bilbo's like, you're getting a little unhinged.
Yeah.
Like I can see it in your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, I did not find the stone. I was just trying to escape this dragon. So,
yep. So
yeah.
Glad that that's a priority too, though. Great.
Right. So the stone or the gold, or even just like the sight of the gold and the idea of the stone is starting to do to Thorin what the ring is doing to Bilbo.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And you're like, please don't do this. I don't want to do this with you. Let's not do it.
I really don't.
So then, and before that, I think Bilbo sees like the chink in what's his face, Smaug's armor. So he's like, oh, it's true. He really can be defeated. And then let's see what happens next. Oh,
the orcs roll up on Lake Town.
That's true. They are like on the roofs.
The English Bard kiddos, as I called them.
And they're the little girls.
They're trying so hard to fight them.
Killy is like a one-man team right now. He's like, I guess I'm gonna have to fight all these because Killy is dying. There are 3 children, and Oin is like, I don't know, helping whatever. And then Legolas comes in and Toriel comes in and they fight all the orcs. The orcs are afraid of the elves clearly because they kill some of them and then the rest of them are like, let's go.
And Legolas is like, nah, I'm about to go after the rest of y'all. And then the Wasp is about to follow him, but then she's like, she sees the one with the hat and he has both plans. And she's like, oh, I can do something with this. And so she makes the healing ointment, does her little spell, because of course she's in love with Gilly, so she has to save his life.
Right, let's talk about that scene. Well, first of all, Legolas is so bossy. I'm like, the only reason you're out here is because of Toriel in the first place. What do you mean, come on, Toriel? Shut up.
Right.
So annoying. Like, go off and fight them on your own. You don't need me. Anyway,
No.
so when Toriel saves Killy and she like glows, she goes into that like elven glow. And she's like speaking in tongues over him
Yeah.
basically.
Right.
And it's supposed to be this like romantic scene where he looks at her. And then after, when he's like fine, he's like Toriel, and then he gives her this whole like, you cannot be her, she is far from me, like, she walks among starlight, like that whole speech.
Yeah.
And I wrote down like, this would actually be a really moving scene if there was chemistry between, like, imagine like Simone Ashley and Jonathan Bailey in this scene. I would have been like
right.
Anybody else, or if it was like Jane and Raphael, or like Nathan and
Because even when he's saying it, it just sounds like he's just saying it, if that makes sense. Like there's not really this like moving like emotion behind it. Because I generally was like, is he talking about her? Like I just remember when he was saying it, like just being like, he's talking about her. Okay, it just sounds like he's just saying like a poem or something that he knows. Like it's just not really, it's not giving. It's not really, you're not really saying anything that I'm just kind of like, oh, I guess, like cool. And like nothing really happens from there. Am I mistaken? They don't even like kiss or anything. It's just like he says it and she kind of like smiles, and I'm like,
she just lets him say it. And I'm like,
okay.
I think she should have loved me. I'm like, oh, the rest of the people are literally standing right there. This is a small like, I'm super confused. What's going on?
Right, cool.
But don't you agree, if you had replaced them with characters who actually that would have actually
it would have definitely been like, okay, cute, love this. But I did not have that reaction.
Because the dialogue, like what he actually says, is really pretty. But it's just like, looking at it, you're like, I'm confused. Like
confusion.
Yeah. So anyway, and once again, it reminds me of when Arwen saves Frodo, which should not be the feeling.
That shouldn't be the vibe, because that's not what you guys are trying to go for.
No. So then we go back to Thorin and the dwarves. They're on the move. They reach a dead end. It's actually really morbid because they find all these dead bodies.
Oh yeah.
And they realize like these people were never able to make it out. They died of like asphyxiation. And he says, I will not die like this, cowering, clawing for breath. And then he says some other things. And then he says, this is my favorite line of the movie. If this is to end in fire, we shall all burn together, or we will all burn together, whatever he says. Thoughts on that, like, I don't know, that scene? Or do you
mean, it's like that moment where it's like they needed that motivation to get back into it. At first they do run in to help him, but then it's like, oh, gotta go. And so it's just kind of like, it's like, all right, no, let's actually fight. Like, let's actually do this. Let's come and do the thing that we were supposed to do, like, which is fight this dragon and take back what's ours.
I think there's no motivator like, well, we're gonna die anyway if we stay here, clearly. So we might as well just and it's funny,
like what Bilbo said, where he's just like, you know, I gotta at least try.
Yeah. So then they start sneaking around the castle, and then we pan back to Legolas fighting the orcs, and I wrote these contacts ... what's going on. I don't remember them being
his eyes are so like, they're like green, but they look weird.
They look like white. They're like blue. People who Bloom have brown eyes. I don't know.
I'm just like,
they were too much. They were good in Lord of the Rings. In this series, they were not. I don't know what was going on, but
I don't know if it's like they gave him contacts and then just kind of like CGI'd them, because it just looks weird.
Yeah. So he fights Bolg, and Bolg escapes, and I feel like his shock looking after him was like, oh, he actually drew blood, because there's like blood coming out of his nose.
Yeah.
You see the elves like bleed.
Yeah. which I think is why he like chased after him. He's like, oh no, no, no. Now I'm mad.
Yeah, but we never see the resolution to that conflict, and Bolg will reappear in the third movie, so that sets up like an enmity
They're
between
probably
them.
gonna have a nice little fight scene in the battle. That's fine.
That's probably true. And so then we're back. The dwarves are fighting Smaug. They're
Oh, and
they're
he's like big mad. Like he's just, I don't even remember what he was saying, but he's just going off while he's like trying to kill them. And
mhm.
like, they start like doing their thing where they're like melting the gold and like they
Yes.
make like this big old statue and everything.
Right. Thorin is like waffling between someone I hate and someone I love, because during this scene where they're trying to escape Smaug, like he's basically like follow Balin, and he's like trusting them to like do different things, which I was like, this is a good leader, who listens. And even though you weren't supposed to go into this mountain on your own, um, you're being a good leader right now. You told them to trust
Mhm.
Bilbo, you told them to trust Balin, like people who to be
Mhm.
whatever. And then they were like working together. It's cool. They're like, he's like falling through the mines, and then Dwalin saves him, and they're like leading him different places and whatever. And I'm like, Smaug is dumb. Does he not realize that they're trying to like misdirect him?
Yeah.
Um, and then I feel like Thorin takes one out of Bilbo, a page out of Bilbo's like book, and is like, if I use my brain, and he starts taunting Smaug and calls him a slug, which I think is hilarious. I wrote that down. I don't know why I love that as an insult. To light the furnaces so that they can make all the gold, and that whole scene is just like, I don't know, cool. He like literally rides away on molten gold, like
Yeah.
on a shield or on a cart or something. Um, and so then he tells Bilbo to lead Smaug into the throne room, where they try to unleash this like golden statue on him.
Is it of his grandfather?
It looks like it.
It kind of look like him, and like then Smaug gets like distracted because he's like, oh my god, this
Oh.
statue. But then it like melts and explodes, and like they basically try to like seal him under the gold basically, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work. And he's like, he gets out of it because he's
Enraged.
talking about like getting to Lake Town to show like his revenge, and which again, don't know what these people in Lake Town did to you, because I don't see why you need to go get revenge on them.
Mm.
Or maybe it's just because he's just so mad. It's like reminding him that like the people of Lake Town almost destroyed him. So he's like, let me go get my revenge. I don't know. Again, don't really know Smaug's
The
deal.
people he fought aren't even alive anymore. They're dead. Like those are generations ago. And Bilbo's like, they literally have nothing to do with this. And he's like, oh, you don't want me to go to Lake Town? Oh, get out. I'm gonna go to Lake
Right.
Town.
So he bursts out of the gold and he's like pissed off, and he bursts out of the mountain. And
Yeah.
it's shot of him like sprinkling the gold off of him. I was like, this is kind of pretty.
It's actually really cool. Him like covered, I wanted him to stay covered in gold because I thought it looked really cool.
Me too.
Well, before the whole gold scene though, there's like a really good line. Thorin says to him, I am taking back what you took. Before he covers him in the gold, which I'm like, theoretically, this is great. This plot device is not going to work for you.
Yeah.
But I'm liking the energy right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, it's interesting because if you compare it to the end of the first movie, Thorin faces Azog, and now at the end of this movie, he's facing Smaug.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows if he will face anyone at the end of the third movie, like what that duel will be. But it's like it's his second like facing up against like a demon of his past, because Smaug destroyed his land and Azog killed his grandfather and like a bunch of his people too. So it's interesting that this like journey of Thorin like coming face to face with the things that have been harmful in the past. But it doesn't work, and Smaug is like, now I'm pissed and I'm gonna go destroy Lake Town. And he has this very dramatic, the last lines of the movie, he says, I am fire, I
like
am death. Yeah.
He's like, I am fire. And he's like, I am death. And I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah. He's flying toward Lake Town, and then Bilbo is like, what have we done? And then it's like, oh, Misty, I'm like, sing.
I you love the ending because of I See Fire.
It's so good. I love, for some reason, I actually really like that line, I am fire, I am death, because it's just so dramatic. And then it's the fact that Ed captured like, if this is to end in fire, then we will all burn together, and like all of these different like key terms in the movie. It's just such a good song. It fits so well. I'm like, Ed Sheeran was the perfect person to ask for
No,
this
for
because that man knows how to write a song.
absolutely knows how to write the song.
And it's
Okay.
just so good. The that comes in is so good. So maybe that is why I love it. So how are we feeling at this point in the thoughts on that last scene in general, or how are you feeling about this end to this movie?
Well, like I said in the beginning, the ending is always just like, to me, doesn't feel like an ending, because I'm just like, oh, it's just obviously it's leading us up into the last movie. But
Mhm.
like I always forget, like the ending doesn't really feel like an ending to me. It's like a cliffhanger, which
Mhm.
I guess it's like, again, preparing you for the last film, but it feels so like abrupt, like I said before. Like it just
Mhm.
feels like, I'm like, oh, that's it. Like maybe if it was just kind of like it ended with Smaug saying, I am fire, I am death, and then ended, I would have been like, okay, I like that. But I think it's like they have this Bilbo being like, what have we done? And it's like end. And I'm like, I mean, cool. But I feel like we didn't really need that last line.
Mm.
Maybe it's because it's like we're like seeing Smaug kind of like build himself up to go towards Lake Town. That if it ended with that, I would have been like, ooh. But then we ended it with like Bilbo. So I
Mhm.
don't know. That's like every time I watch, I'm just like, I keep always feeling like there's gonna be more, but then it just ends.
Yeah, because I mean, and there is more like that will
Yeah,
happen in the next.
right.
What do you? Okay, so I want to ask you because you haven't watched the third movie. What are your predictions for what will happen? What are your predictions slash what would you like to happen? If they could be the same thing, but
Yeah. So I actually wrote it down in like my note. I was like my post film thought was like, well, now that all a bunch of things are probably gonna happen, but Wilderness Man is going to tell, Galadriel what's going on. And so that'll probably lead to like the elves getting ready to fight and like prepare to, get ready for this battle or whatever. And like Gandalf is trapped with the orcs, so obviously he has to get out of there somehow. There's obviously going to be a battle or a war
a
because
battle of the five armies. Yeah.
that, right? Battle of the Five Armies, and also the reason why the first Lord of the Rings opens up. That's literally what they're talking about, pretty much. Um, where everyone unites to fight against Sauron. That's how you say his name. I want to say Soren, but that's not how you say it.
Mhm.
Um, and so, that's exciting. So we're gonna get to see that happen, like the humans and everyone come together and fight. So that's obviously going to happen. I'm trying to figure out like, so we're gonna defeat Smaug first, and then we're gonna fight Sauron. Is that what's going on? Like that's kind of like where my brain is at. Cause I'm like, we still have Smaug, so we still have to defeat him,
Mhm.
but this battle is coming. So, like, are they gonna defeat Smaug and then be like, oh, we all now have to fight Sauron? Because Gandalf obviously has to come back and be like, hey guys, last mission, woo, let's do it.
Right.
And
And
like,
we know too, like Sauron does not like you go in
yeah,
knowing like he's not gonna be like gone no
yeah,
matter what how this movie ends. He's not gone
mhm,
because he's gonna
yeah,
come back. So
right,
there's gonna be some like something left unfinished, I guess.
right.
So
Probably, yeah. So that way it's obviously gonna be like, oh, and then Lord of the Rings starts. So Gandalf will probably come through at the right time, like he always does.
mm-hmm.
And then yeah, and I also said like I'm wondering, are we fighting both Smaug and Sauron, which is probably a yes because they're both still very much, you know, part of the plot. So I'm definitely gonna need a lot of snacks for this next one
Yeah.
because I feel like I'm about to be. I mean, obviously all the movies are like 3 hours, but I'm like this one. I'm gonna have to really be like, wow, okay, we're gonna be here for 3 hours because a lot is about to happen.
Yeah. Do you think anybody's gonna die in this movie? And if so, who?
I don't. I don't know. I have a feeling because I feel like I low-key spoiled this for myself by accident because when I told you about Philly and Killy and I didn't know they were brothers, I looked it up. I was like, oh, are Philly and Killy brothers? And then it said Philly and Killy were brothers. And I said, that's past tense and I don't like that. I don't like that. So I'm like, if Killy
Well, okay. What I will say is I won't say anything about it, but I mean, Lord of the Rings is like a long time in the future. So there's a possibility that they die. There is a possibility that it's talking about them past tense because we're in the present and they were in the past.
got it. That's also
Yeah.
fair. That's fair.
So, because I looked up Bard because I was trying to figure out if that was his full name or if that was a nickname, and it said like he ruled from this time to this time, and I'm pretty sure that that ended like or he lived between from this time to this time, and that ended before I think the Fellowship of the Ring, but that just because he died of natural causes because he was a man, so they could die even regular reasons.
Either way.
That's hilarious. Don't look anything else up.
Oh, no. I'm not. I hate spoilers, but I'm like, either way, if they kill Killy, I am going to cry. I'm going to be very sad. But I'm trying to think. The old man dwarf probably might. Because he's one old, but it's like it'll probably be like this touching moment between him and Thorin where it's like, this is what I came to do. It's an honor to die, be a part of your army, all of that, typical war battle fantasy movie speeches when people are dying. Who else? That's all I can really think of.
Yeah. Because a lot of people we know too, like me. Yeah. Like Sauron, Gandalf, Galadriel, like those people.
Like
Elrond.
They're not gonna die. Yeah.
They're obviously, yeah.
I mean, Toriel might die, but aren't elves like immortal anyway, so she can't really die?
They can die. They can be killed. Like in Lord of the Rings, there's that one elf that comes to help them.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
So they're not like there's a word for it. I don't remember what the word is, but they can be killed. But if they're not killed, then they'll live forever. But then also like they can go off to live in this like eternal elf place, which is where they, how like Elrond tries to send Arwen there because she's dying.
Yeah.
I don't really understand. So if someone wants to explain that to me too. So they're like immortal technically, but if they would like, this is what I understand. They can go to elf heaven. I don't really get.
Yeah.
But technically they are immortal. And actually, let me not say that because that might be a spoiler. I have a question that I have to answer to myself after you watch it. I caught myself just in time so that it wouldn't be a spoiler to you. But any other thoughts I feel like this was longer than our first one.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because so much happened. Yeah. I mean, not that nothing happened in the first one, but I think it's like because we're getting into like the meat of everything and the conflict of everything. There's so much to like break down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this last one, I'm kind of excited for. I'm like, okay, how's this all gonna end? Because watching Lord of the Rings, I was hype about this last movie. So, yeah, I'm like, I wonder how this. I mean, it's probably gonna be pretty epic. It says 5 armies, so that's elves, humans, dwarves, orcs, wizards? Or is there?
That might be right. I feel like I have to look it up every time I watch it. Let's find out. Hold on. What are the 5 armies in The Hobbit? It is it's men, elves, dwarves, orcs, 2 different kinds of orcs. The orcs of Dol Guldur and the orcs of Mount Gundabad.
All right, they're the good orcs, the ones that are fighting for the good people?
No, there are no good orcs.
Okay. Just kidding. JK.
I think they're just 2 different orcs, which is weird because I mean, I think the wizards just aren't big enough to be considered an army. There are only so many of them.
Okay. But you only named 4.
No, I didn't. There are the men, the elves, the dwarves, and then 2 different kinds of orcs.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yep. Yep. So, and technically there's 1 hobbit.
Yeah. There's 1 hobbit.
Yeah. But the hobbits are like, they don't fight. They don't be fighting. They really don't. They just mind their business in the.
Oh, maybe Bilbo will fight in this one.
Maybe. All right. Well, this has been AM and the PM. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this has been enjoyable to you.
Yeah.
And thank you for Ariel's watching of Battle of the 5 Armies. Once again, she hasn't seen it yet, so please don't write anything in the comments that might.
Yeah, don't like DM me with spoilers because I'll have to block you.
Don't do it. I'll have to. Yeah. Don't.
I will have to block you. So.
All right. So see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.